What is an eponym? A person after whom a discovery, invention, or place is named or thought to be named. There are very few eponyms in the hunting industry. A product so popular and so functional, it becomes the act of the product. So how does something become an eponym? It's the best, hands down.
All right, welcome back everybody to another episode of the Hunting Beast Report. I am your host, Scott Biskobing, and join me, as always, the man himself, the Hunting Beast, Mr. Dan Infalt. What's up, Dan?
I'm alive.
Alive and well. Awesome. We got a really exciting show for you guys again tonight. Happy to have you guys all joining us. We are going to be bringing on Pat and Pat from Hunt Suburbia and Huntstock. So let me go ahead and bring them up on the screen here. How's it going, fellas?
What's going on?
It's going good.
Long time no see.
I know.
So as you guys all see here tonight, we're starting about a half hour early here. We're going to, as advertised, we're going to be doing Pat Burns' top 5 here, but we wanted to bring both Pat and Pat on to talk a little bit about Huntstock, because as you guys know, about a week or so ago, Dan and I just got back from the East Coast, Westminster, Massachusetts, from Huntstock, and I got to say, we had an absolute blast. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what was your overall impressions of the folks out there and the reception that you received?
Well, you were there. So, I mean, it was kind of crazy. Not what I expected. I mean, I got there and everybody came over to thank me for coming, even the farm owners and everything. And it was amazing. And it was just like, it wasn't like a deer show. It was like a deer camp. All the well-known hunters there, big name people, just walking around talking to you like normal. And, like the vendors were set up with like their deer camps instead of like a booth. And there's bands in the after hours. It was just a whole different concept than a deer show. And I'll tell you what, Pat and Pat had to talk me into going. They're very persistent, but they got me to go. And I'm really glad I did. And I wish I would have went earlier. So I'll definitely be making the trip back out to Massachusetts. But when I saw what was going on, I really urged them to come to Wisconsin, because I think Wisconsin has to experience this.
I wholeheartly agree. Pat and Pat, whichever Pat wants to chime in first here. Do you want to just give us a little backstory and the inspiration or the thought process and why you started Huntstock in the first place?
Yeah, we just kind of we had met through Pat's podcast, which is Hunt Suburbia, and he had a couple of people had hit him up about interviewing me for just local deer hunting stuff, and through that we just developed a friendship and relationship, and our backgrounds kind of collided in multiple ways, and I had expertise in one side and he had expertise in the other, and we just wanted to do something together. And Pat had an idea for a long time to do some sort of event, and I freestyled the word Huntstock real quick, and now we're 4 years into it.
He did. Pat did come up with the name. He did. It was, through doing my podcast, I talked with so many good hunters and so many people over the years. And one of the things I just kept hearing over and over from them, once they learned that my background was in events, I worked at a company called Spartan Race for a ton of years, and I was one of the first employees there. I learned a lot about the event business. I traveled to 80 Spartan races in my first 2 years. Once people heard about that, they were like, man, we love what you're doing with this podcast. You should think about kind of reviving the hunting show industry, because the shows that they've been used to going to in the Northeast anyways, they just felt like there was something missing, and it was stale, and it was, kind of felt like it was dying out, and it needed some energy. So that's the reason we started it. And it's really about bringing, it started around the Northeast, bringing that Northeast hunting community together, having everybody in the Northeast rallying around the same thing that we all love to do, which is hunting. And it took a lot of, like Dan said, we're persistent. It takes a lot of selling and telling about the idea to people and having them, they have to buy into it. Everybody has to buy into it in order for it to be something special.
But once they do,
and that's what happened that first year. I mean, people bought into it. That was the hardest year to sell it because we had never done it before. It was just an idea. It was just a dream. And, we had to pitch the dream to people and have them believe in it and buy into it. And then that first year went off great. It was like my dreams coming true of everything that I had been envisioning for this show. It happened that first year. And then every year we just worked to make it better. The community is really rallying around it, and I love doing it in an underserved place. Like the Northeast has always been overlooked as a hunting hunt. In the industry, it's overlooked. Brands don't want to come up here, but we always thought that was weird. Hunting
started here, kind of.
Yeah,
in one of the places.
This is where we settled. This is where the oldest tradition in the country is, and we just wanted to make sure that we built something that everybody can be proud of. And I think we're on the right track. And that's what we want to bring to Wisconsin too, is that same community feel, everybody getting together from the Midwest, traveling to this show to experience just really fellowship in a really big deer camp environment.
And just sharing our common love for the outdoors and realizing there's less division than people believe, like one of my favorite parts about Huntstock was, I don't know, we were there 10 minutes before you were flicking it up with Eberhardt. that was awesome.
True story.
Because we were joking ahead of time because it was like, oh, is there real animosity? Is it kind of, what is it? And just off the bat, you guys were chit-chatty and it was awesome. And I was like, that's exactly what we're about, is like dropping those egos. Everyone, like, we're all in the same boat. We're all friends. We all love deer and hunting and the outdoors. And I think we all need to rally around that more than, nitpicking about the small differences in the ways that each of us hunt or how we choose to,
Yeah. Who cares if you think scent control's bullshit and and John thinks, that it's something that's necessary for hunting. That stuff doesn't matter. When you go to Huntstock, none of that matters.
Yeah. Right. The key word is hunt. That's what we all want to do.
It was interesting, like the booths and stuff. It wasn't like a Walmart, like a regular show. I know I started talking to a well-known outfitter that I really like. I've kind of started watching him online, saw him there, and went to his booth and was talking to him. Well, he came to me first. He came over, and he's a fan of my show. And that's actually how I started following him, because he was following me on Facebook, and I noticed him, So we talked about doing this hunt, and I said, yeah, I mean, someday I'll do it. I'm just real busy this year. And he left me with someday never comes. So I ran over to his booth and decided to do it. And when I went to talk to him about it, you didn't go to a booth and talk to him. You went in and sat around a campfire type setting, at his camp, under his tent and stuff, and talked to his guides and stuff. And it was really cool. Just the way everybody was set up, and, it wasn't your regular type of atmosphere.
No, and that's what we do. We encourage that. We want every vendor that goes there to be unique and creative, and not feel like there's boundaries to it. You don't have to just stay in this box. If you want to, you want to bring in a whole moose head and put it on logs in there and go for it. That's our thing. Like, we want it, like, put your own spin on it.
Yeah, two of the unique things that we do at the show from an exhibitor perspective is we don't allow. I see Steve DeNoyer commented here. What he thinks is unique about Huntstock is it's all hunting vendors. There's no insurance, no rental companies. That's something that we knew is important to having the atmosphere that we want. There's nothing worse than being at a show and you might want to go up and talk to Dan Infalt or John Eberhardt, but in between them, instead of having Arxis boots there, you've got somebody trying to sell you on solar panels for your camp or something.
Gutter guards.
We realized by going to some of these other shows and seeing a lot of the shows here in the Northeast, and I'm sure you guys see the same thing there, that's kind of the downfall of a lot of these shows, is they start watering it down and start inviting people that aren't really part of the culture. And we wanted to make sure that we held tight to that and made sure we don't care what you offer us. If you don't have something to do with hunting, it's not going to make sense.
And I get it from a show promoter's perspective too. It's hard to turn down free money. And free money, all of those solar companies, typically outside of the hunting space, those types of sponsors are willing to spend more. They have more budget, and so a show promoter is like, well, I could, sell 30 booths and make an extra 50 grand. Why would I not do it? We take that sacrifice and say no to the money, because I know that the atmosphere and the energy in the festival is so much better when we stick to our guns on that. And that makes the attendee, more happy, makes all the exhibitors, everybody feels at home, and it just ends up being better for the show. If you can stick to your guns on that, then it ends up being better. And then the other thing that Pat brought up that's unique too is when I'm talking to exhibitors and vendors, that's my main thing with Huntstock. Is my background is in sponsorship. You'll see in the decks, if you get a deck from me or you get a rate card or something, it says right there, we only have one request of you guys, and it's not to be boring. Don't bring a standard booth where you're just sitting behind a table with a pamphlet and, you're not engaging. Stand up, be proud about your booth, build something truly unique, have something that is special, have an experience that people can go through, or give away something. When people approach your booth, don't go right into your sales pitch about your product. Talk about hunting. We're all here to talk about hunting and share hunting stories. Talk about that first. Lead with that. And once somebody gets to know you and they trust you, that's when the sales will come from an exhibitor perspective.
One of the things I really liked was we got a weird echo there. Hang on a second. Was the seminars and how it's like right there too. It's right in the midst of everything. It's not tucked off in some other corner and where everybody's, right there and experiencing that. Even if they're passing by, they're like, oh, Lanny's up there. I'm going to grab a seat here and listen to what Lanny has to say, or Barry Wenzel. Like, that stuff was really cool.
Yeah, that's another thing when you're building the show. You got to really think about everything. And I think having those seminars stages, in the same building, the same room as the exhibitors, it adds an extra cooler feel to it. And we're willing to sacrifice. If you look at that picture right there, we could have sold another 15 booths in that space. And I think a lot of show promoters would have done that, and then found a different place to do the seminars, because all they're thinking about is their bottom line. But we really want it to feel like a deer camp, and we're sticking to our guns on that. And we promise you, when we put on a show, it's going to be the best show and the coolest show that you've ever been to. And we wouldn't, like, even for instance, our New York show that we were supposed to do this year, we canceled it because it was heading in a direction where we could see it wasn't going to be the show that we promised it was going to be. And that was just a local market thing. That market didn't rally around it the same way as the Massachusetts market did, and the way that the Midwest we know is going to, especially when we come out with, we've got some real special announcements coming out, in the next week or so, some really big names coming. It's going to be a show where you definitely don't want to miss it. And if you're a content creator, we're all about, that's a huge part of our show too, is inspiring that next generation. So podcasters and YouTubers, and we want you at the show. We've got special deals for you if you want a booth, if you're a content creator. So you can reach out to me about that to get booths. And we've actually, I don't know if we want to talk about it now, but we're going to do a special giveaway before we sign off here too, Dan.
Yeah, go ahead and mention it.
Yeah, whatever you want. Yeah,
so if you're listening to this and you own a hunting business, something in the hunting space, and you want to exhibit at Huntstock, we've got pretty limited indoor space. We've got 3 buildings at the venue we're going to, and the space is definitely going to sell out. But we're going to give away 1 free booth space to somebody listening to this.
How big is it?
A 10 by 10, free 10 by 10. So if you got a business, you want to be at Huntstock and exhibit, send me an email, huntsuburbia@gmail.com. Suburbia, there it is. It's spelled right there. huntsuburbia@gmail.com. Just let me know that you want a booth at Huntstock, and if you do it, I get back from vacation on September 1st. So September 1st is the last day to do it. But everybody who sends me an email, we'll put you in for a drawing, and we'll give away one free booth space. And we'll also do a free booth space to a content creator too. So whether you're a content creator or a hunting business, send me an email, and we'll get that rolling and draw something after September 1st. We'll draw a winner.
Got a quick question here for you, Pat. It says from Bill, are there camping availabilities for someone who wants to camp out during the Huntstock show?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. And that's something that we're super excited about with this Wisconsin show is they've got RV hookups. They've got a campgrounds right on site. You'll be able to book it through their website. It won't go through us, but they've got plenty of space. To be honest, when we first started Huntstock, like that's what we wanted. We don't have that option in Massachusetts, but thinking about Woodstock, the music festival where we kind of got this inspiration from, we always wanted it to be a place where people drove a long distance. They stayed the whole time. They made the trek and they stay the whole time, and we're going to be able to have that at this Midwest show. So we're stoked.
And we make it worth the whole time too. This isn't the type of show where you normally go, you do a lap and you get out of there. We try to make sure that every facet of it is an experience in some way. So in the Massachusetts one, we have a deer that's donated, and there's an experience where they show you, for people who don't know how to properly gut a deer, that's displayed for you live, and you get to witness that. Same thing with cutting it up, and then deer tracking and everything. We want everything to be an experience. We want you to come there and feel like you want there to be more hours in a day. You don't want it to end. So that's camping is going to be great because you don't have to leave.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. What's really neat about that is the way you guys have it lined up. It's not like your traditional show where you do your walkthrough and that, and maybe I'll pop back over here. The timing of all your seminars going constantly throughout the day, the raffles at the end. I mean, what did you guys give away? Over $30,000 in raffle prizes?
Oh, it was
door prizes, not raffle prizes, door prizes.
Yeah, door prize. So everybody that comes to Huntstock gets a door prize ticket. And we had over $40,000 before the show started. Then once the show happens and you're just caught up in the whole atmosphere, people start giving away, adding stuff all the time. I mean, we probably gave away more than $50,000 worth of stuff: bows, guns, optics, stands, saddles, cameras, hunts, just tons of stuff. And
that's just us. That's not even that's just us. That's not even considering the other booths and brands that are there that are doing side giveaways,
doing their own giveaways.
So much opportunities.
Yeah, Dan said we did. We gave away Lanny Benoit's famous truck last year.
Yeah, we did.
And we gave away a hunt with Lanny and Dan and Rick Labby this year. We're doing a special camp where Dan's coming to the East for the first time. He's going to be hunting out here with us, and Lanny and Rick, two other legends that give seminars, they're going to be in camp. And we gave away 2 spots to people at Huntstock that get to share in that experience, actually stay in camp with you guys, share strategy, camaraderie, and then who knows, maybe even get out and hunt with you guys too. So we're all about just like pushing the boundaries, not saying no to anybody's grand idea. If somebody's like, hey, I'd really like to do this at Huntstock, and I'd like to build a whole section over here for beaver trapping. It's like, all right, cool, let's do it. Yes, we want to say yes to everybody and just infuse this energy that we have for the hunting community back into everybody and empower them to let's build something amazing and let's never stop.
Yeah.
One of my big pet peeves with shows is guys want to go with their buddies and have a good time, and they go there, and at the end of the show, there's nothing to do. They just leave. Yeah. And it's like, what are you going to do? Go to a restaurant? You're in a city usually, where, you guys are picking country venues for one thing, but the show doesn't end at the end of the day.
No.
The booths start closing up and stuff, and then a band starts playing, and everybody goes to the band, and it's just a great time. And you can be there with buddies and stuff, and it's not like being packed like sardines into some box of concrete, with a bunch of vendors trying to sell you cell phones.
Yeah, I mean, you probably didn't even feel like you were the show was crowded at all. Saturday was our biggest day we've ever had, but because we're on such an expansive venue and the properties, we lay it out so that it's spread out. it never feels like you're ass to ass with people. You don't feel overcrowded, and it's a constant flow of traffic. You have, you move from one great conversation to the next, and you never stop until, 11 p.m. or midnight.
We're never pushy about sales. We always just let them be, flow. If somebody wants something, they can buy it and it's sitting there. And we just talk hunting, and by the end of Saturday, I was pretty much sold out of everything I had there. We just had small sizes and stuff, and really big fat guy sizes left. It was an incredible experience for me.
Speaking of small sizes too, we accommodate children, as my buddy Matt Renzi is talking about. We let kids in for free. We want to make sure that this next generation of outdoorsmen and women get as much experience as possible. And that's what's unique about this. If you really think about it, where else can you go that you could go for a weekend and get however many years of experience it is if you sit through a couple of days of these seminars? I mean, compared to, Dan, you're probably similar to me. Like, I just stumbled through the woods and kept bouncing my head off trees and laurel, and then I figured it out. I didn't have the guide of this. So this is, it's just amazing to be able to kind of share this knowledge and pass it on,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kids under 12 are free at Huntstock. And we've got stuff for kids of all ages. I mean, if you have little kids, we've got like free s'more making stations. We've got bounce houses and stuff like that. And then if you're, a kid that can sit through a seminar, we've got tons of that available for you. We've got mini games, BB gun shoots in some instances and things like that. We know that, if you think back to when you were a kid and you were going to shows, if something truly special happened, you remembered it every year and you're bugging your parents to go back. And in this case, they're not bugging them because the parents want to be there too.
And seeing the kids win like a door prize or something like that too, that's going to be something they remember forever, getting called on stage and they win a youth bow or, just anything. It's just great. It's great energy all the way around, man.
The guy that won the hunt with me, Lanny, and Rick, he ran up and gave Lanny a hug.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. And I'm so excited that you had a great time, Dan. And I know that you were going into it. You didn't know what kind of reception you were going to have. And Scott,
we knew.
We knew. We knew you had a following out here. And I'm just glad that you had the experience that we hoped you were going to have there.
Dan,
Awesome.
Dan was a nervous wreck going out there. He's like, I just don't, I'm just kidding. So much so that he had, no, I won't get into that story. Pat, you know which one that one is. You guys both know about that.
It didn't involve Thai food. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Very little Thai food, in fact.
3 sips.
Looking forward. You guys will find out when the shirts come out. But, well, that's awesome. We are super stoked. Dan and I don't know, we've had umpteen conversations since we've been back and that. And I know you guys have been talking too. Like, we're really excited about everything that's coming. And I mean, we're still like 11 months away, but yet the energy is already building greatly for this show out here in Wisconsin. And I can't say enough about all the folks out there in Westminster, Massachusetts. Just overwhelmingly nice and friendly people. Now, we were also warned if we go a little too far east or whatever, we'll just run into all the massholes. But but
you can't escape them all. Yeah,
right, exactly. But I mean, it was a real community type feeling out there, and just fantastic. Really good people out east. And you guys got some big bucks out there. I mean, if folks who are just from the Midwest watching or other parts of the country and aren't familiar with the Northeast, just look at some of the stuff on that back wall right there and what you're about to see in the rest of this episode. There is some big bucks out there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you gotta find them. They're here, but they're hard to find. But that's what makes it. I think that's why the Northeast is so passionate. Is we like the hard work and we like doing all the detective work and spending all that time scouting, because that's what you have to do to get a big buck in the Northeast. You have to spend a lot of time. And Pat will walk you through his bucks, and a lot of them, in the laurel, and people don't want to go into the laurel, and it's hard scouting. It's hard to figure out. But if you get one buck, like, any of these bucks, those are only 125 to 130 inch deer. You get one of those, I mean, that feels like a giant out here.
Sure.
And it feels just as good as, you know, guys in the Midwest shooting a 170. When you're out here, everything's into perspective, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, on the Monday after Huntstock, Mr. Patrick Burns here was nice enough to take us out and do some scouting and that, and showing us, you know, what the terrain is really like in that Mount Laurel. That's not something we have here. I mean, we have our own challenges, obviously, with the briars and things like that. But it's just, it was really interesting to see the terrain and kind of
Michigan, right?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
It was in Michigan.
California.
Or California.
Yeah.
Western. Yeah.
One of those places.
Yeah.
I think just before I bounce out and Pat does his top 5, we should just mention the dates and the venue and everything for the Wisconsin show. So
And we want to give away a couple of tickets too, right?
yeah, we also want to give away a couple VIP 3-day VIP passes too. So you guys have my email, huntsuburbia@gmail.com. Whether you're just a listener, an exhibitor, content creator, email me. We're going to do a bunch of giveaways. Email by September 1st. But the show is July 17th, 18th, and 19th, and it's at Dodge County Fairgrounds in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. We'll probably open up ticket sales in November. That's normally when we do it. So you won't be able to buy your tickets yet, but we are selling exhibitor spaces. I've already sold quite a few. And we have limited space, so reach out if you're interested. We'll get you into that giveaway for a free booth, and then we can continue the conversation about, you know, filling up the rest of the exhibitor spots. But guys, I really appreciate you having me on, and you're in for a really good one with Pat, because Pat's a great hunter, and he's got some good bucks to walk you guys through.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us, and go ahead, Dan.
I said thanks, Pat G, for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. I appreciate it.
Someone said, is Beaver Dam anywhere near Green Bay?
It's in the same state. It's in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
I would say that.
About 2 hours south.
About 2 hours south and a little bit to the west, but
That's nothing. People were driving to the Massachusetts show from as far away as Louisiana, upstate New York, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island.
Even Idaho. We had people drive from Idaho.
We had the guy from Michigan last year too.
Yep.
So don't be afraid of a little bit of highway. This is worth the drive.
Yeah.
But you can camp there.
Yeah. Exactly.
right. You're not going for a day. Get the 3-day pass and spend some time and make a little mini vacation out of it. It'll be worth it.
100%. Great.
All right, guys. I'll step out. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks.
Yep. All right.
All right, now for what everybody's been waiting for.
Well, I was looking forward to the Huntstock talk.
Yeah, me too.
That's good stuff for sure. But yeah, so let's get into Pat Burns' top 5. Now, again, we've been doing this series here for a little bit, and these aren't necessarily maybe his favorite or his best or anything, but these are the 5 that he picked to choose. And he'll kind of break them all down, sharing some of the tactics, the reason why he hunted this particular spot or this stand location, and kind of get into some of the tactics that he's used to be successful with some of these bucks. And I think you guys are going to be pretty impressed. So without any further ado, Pat, are you ready to go? Should we get into buck number 1?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, here we go. Buck number 1. Tell us all about it.
This used to be known as the Big 8. I know you'll have some other pictures up shortly, but he was a huge 8 for years, and I got his sheds a couple different years, and then eventually he ended up there he is there. Back when he had brows, but then the year that I ended up getting him, he lost the brows and just put on like a 7-inch drop tine. So he was a big 6 with a drop tine. So I called him 6 below at that point. And I had chased him around, and it's ironic too, because around this time was kind of around the time that I was becoming a fan of Dan's style of hunting too. So this is a literal swamp donkey. So he lived kind of in the back part of this swamp and terrain kind of all met. So there was probably 3 different types of vegetation meeting. There was terrain, and then there was also just the way that it this swamp kind of turned into a teardrop in the back end, which was at the southeast corner of it. The northwest wind kind of sent all of the scent into the back corner of this swamp, and the terrain was just treacherous getting in there. So it was hell to get into. I had scouted it first early on, and you could kind of get into the swamp easily, but in order to hunt it, if you come in that way, you're going to blow anything out of the back of it. So I used to have to go probably about a 1.5 mile walk all the way out and around to be able to backdoor and drop into the back corner where my scent was just blowing at a ledge the entire time. But I noticed from having some cameras in there and the way that the runs were, it seemed like all of the bucks would kind of come to the back corner of this swamp to be able to scent check the ridges and stuff on the other side of the swamp. So I set up, I just kind of did what they did, but took 40 yards back from where they were going, and just so I could kind of watch them come in without ever disturbing it. And right in front of the tree where I chose to put my stand, there was a nice rock wall there. And my entrance made it so that I literally never had to disturb this swamp. I never had to disturb the area where the deer were walking. I didn't, I only had a couple occasions where I bumped them going in, and this turned into a spot that I could hunt. I could hunt it probably almost every day, and I still can. I go there now, and it's the way the setup is at this particular spot just is perfect because you never have to disturb it. So, he was a great learning experience for me. It kind of taught me how to not play musical trees too much, and if you got a spot and it's good to stick with it.
I was thinking when I was looking at those rock walls, now they're actually kind of high and they funnel the deer. But I was thinking that you could have some setups where you're on one side of the wall shooting onto the other side.
Yep.
And never get sent over by a deer trail, and the deer aren't going over and smelling that you've been there.
Exactly. And this is a perfect example of that where I kind of walked along this ledge and then dumped down into the swamp and never crossed that rock wall unless I'm going in there to find my arrow, and it does exactly what you say. They have no reason to hop that rock wall if the run's on the other side of it. So to them, it's just kind of like it's a barrier, and it's kind of a boundary, especially with the woods and the vegetation leading right to that rock wall, and then it turning into swamp beyond it. So it was just an ideal setup. And I think I got 3 or 4 years of his sheds too. Finding sheds for me is a big part of unraveling the puzzle and really trying to walk a day in the shoes of these deer. I try to figure out where they're going all the time, where they are. So I end up with velvet pictures and the sheds and everything in between, as part of my hunting style. Is just 365 days a year, which is probably too much, but it worked out all right in this situation.
Can you explain the rock wall? Go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, that's the one thing that caught me by surprise when I looked at the terrain with you when we went out scouting, was that laurel creates a year-round place for them things to hide and live. So those deer are shedding right where they're living in the fall. Like by me, they winter places, so you got to, figure out where they're at, which makes it a little different. But you find in their sheds, you might not be exactly where they are, but you're right in the vicinity. All you have to do is find that buck then.
Yeah.
And I would think that you do it with cameras.
Yeah, a lot of times it's the cameras. Yeah, and with the laurel, and there's huge oaks in this area too. So they literally have food and cover in the same exact place. So it's not like they have a bedding area and then they have to travel far from that bedding area to a food source that's, however many hundreds of yards away. I mean, there's enormous oaks everywhere and laurel everywhere. So they just kind of get funneled by some of those reverse pockets that we were in when we were in that laurel. They get funneled by that. But the trick is it took me a lot of years to climb through that stuff before you end up on an actual deer run, and then kind of map them all out and mark them and know how you can approach it without screwing up everything. So the cameras definitely provide me a lot of a lot. Sure.
Can you explain for those in the Midwest that might not be familiar with what mountain laurel is, and these rock walls too? Can Can you kind of maybe break that down just a little bit? And
The rock walls a lot of the time are remnants from some of the early settlements that happened here on the East Coast and in New England specifically. Most of New England back in the 1700s and the 1600s and all the way up into the mid 1800s was like 70 to 80% deforested. So where now you see just, miles and miles of timber, back in the day it was all deforested and it was just fields. So there's these rock walls that would create boundaries on people's properties as well as serve as pens for their livestock and whatnot back in the day. So now they're just, they look like these archaic, just piles of rocks that go for miles through the woods. And I thought it was cool that you guys appreciated that, because we kind of take it for granted here, but it's definitely a tool, like Dan said. Thinking outside the box. That's a travel corridor for the deer. And then when there's breaks in the rock wall that used to be a place where a carriage would get through to go to a farm or an old road, the deer use those now. They want to take the path of least resistance. So, and as far as the mountain laurel goes, the mountain laurel is kind of it's a rhododendron. So it's kind of a viney, brittle branch and green leaf that stays green throughout the year, even in the winter. And in some places it can be, knee to waist high, but there's other places where it gets so thick and tall, it's 12, 14 feet high, and it can be an impenetrable wall, and climbing through it, as you guys saw.
Yeah.
I took you guys the easy way because it was hot, but there's you have to use your hands, and you kind of swimming through the stuff the whole time. You're kind of getting it out of your way and moving and stepping over stuff. So the terrain mixed with that kind of sheds off a decent amount of hunters. So just like Dan likes to get out far and go in the middle of the swamps, I treat the laurel as that. I try to lose a lot of the hunters by getting real deep into that thick stuff that nobody wants to get into, because once it gets dark too, if you get turned around in there, it's a long crawl back to the truck.
Oh yeah. I mean, Dan and I were on the plane flying back, and I'm scrolling through some pictures, and because I snapped a couple on that of us kind of going through, and Dan goes, "Well, that's a really bad picture." I'm like, "Well, it wasn't meant to be a good picture. It was just to kind of show like what this Mount Laurel's like." And I had the other Dan in front of me, and you could barely see him in the picture. I mean, that's how thick it was, and he was 5 yards in front of me at best.
Which is why some of these deer can get to the maturities they get to in some of the areas that I try to hunt, is that it makes it real difficult to get a shot off if they're moving. So if you're a gun hunter and you're out here trying to track them through the woods or whatnot, you better be a good shot and get that shot off quick, because if he takes one bound into that stuff, he's gone.
Not to mention the amount of noise that you're making going through there too. I mean, how can you possibly, it's got to be really difficult to sneak up on anything without, the conditions got to be right, high winds and things like that, a lot of natural noise for you to try to get through there.
Yeah, and I learned a lot of that just watching the video of us kind of scouting on Monday, watching it back and listening to how loud we actually were moving through there. As you're moving, you almost don't notice it as much as when you're sitting silent and just hearing, "Damn, that's a lot of fucking noise with us walking through there."
It was probably mostly me.
Probably.
All right. Real quick, one quick question before we get to number 2. Steve asks, do deer up there follow the path of least resistance like many places?
Yeah, I think they do for the most part. What I learned with a couple of the big ones is it's less of the laurel specifically is less of an obstacle for them. Like there's been instances where I've seen them moving through the laurel, and you're like, how in the heck is he even getting through that stuff? And they just, they'll go right through it. But yeah, for the most part, I think naturally any deer wants to take the path of least resistance unless there's some sort of danger or reason not to. So yeah, right. They definitely do.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to buck number 2 here.
Nice.
This looks like a young Pat Burns right here.
Yeah. This was my first like good buck. This was my first real good buck, and this actually is from the exact same tree as the buck you just showed. So,
Dan. Dan might have something to say about that. I don't know.
Yeah, this is we call it the killer tree. I mean, this is literally the exact same tree, and this spot is still. It's just a bulletproof spot. You know, there's some spots that you go to that are completely in the favor of the deer, and it's difficult for you to get in there and hunt, and they have all the advantages. This spot sets up where the advantage is completely in the hunter's favor, and it's the only spot I have like that. But yeah, I had I only had pictures of this one. I never got any sheds off of this guy at all, and it was. You know, I had pictures of him. I was excited about seeing him. He had the super time length. He was one of the first big bucks that I had ever gotten on camera consistently. And it was November 4th, which is a key date for me, man. I love that time right after Halloween for me. It seems like the if there's some good weather, the deer are just so curious and on their feet at that time of the year. They're like, they haven't fully left their summer ranges yet, but they're kind of checking on those doe groups and floating around and being a little less spooky. So I had some pictures of them. I went into this spot. I'd seen a bunch of other deer. I actually shot a deer the day before that was smaller, but this was a cool story. Now that I'm remembering, I like this show now. It's pretty cool. So this is cool as heck, and this. Hey,
we do what we can.
This is a good tactic that I think helped me.
Perfect.
I had I had been sitting in this stand, and the swamp across from me is probably about 150 yards. So I'm tucked in some woods and laurel. It goes to the rock wall. Then I'm at the back end of this teardrop swamp. But across the swamp for me is the same thing. It goes up a ridge, and it's all kinds of thick laurel and oaks, and it's just kind of like that all the way around me. I had heard, like we were talking about the loud laurel, there was a doe being chased by a couple bucks across the swamp. So it sounds like a herd of elephants at about 7 a.m. when you can't hear anything else, just snapping in the laurel, and then you can just hear it and hear it and hear it. And I had heard this going on for probably 20 minutes, and I'm like saying to myself, how in the hell can I get this deer to come over here? They're 150 yards away, and they're just paralleling me, running back and forth along the edge of the swamp, you know? But something kicked in my mind, and I said, that doe doesn't want to be with that buck right now, or those bucks. She's not, you know, she's trying to get away, so she must not be ready. So as that's happening, I had a little the little Primo's can. So I said, oh shit, maybe if I hit this a couple times, she'll hear it and she'll think there's some other doe over here, and she might come over here to try to get these bucks off her ass. And I did it. I hit it a couple times. I grunted, and within 5 minutes, and I rattled too. Within 5 minutes, all of a sudden, this doe comes running directly towards my tree across the swamp, and I get the whole view across. I can see her coming 150 yards, and she's literally beelining directly for the tree as fast as she can. And she goes right under my tree. Behind her is a train of bucks, 4 of them, and the first one being this one. So as they're all coming, I'm like, how the hell am I going to stop this thing? So they're coming, they're moving their way through the swamp, and I'm trying to it's not happening at all. So I literally screamed at this deer. I said, hey, and the thing locked its legs up, and then poof, perfect shot. But it was cool to be able to almost trick that doe into thinking there were other doe over here so that she could get away from the pressure of these bucks that were on her butt early, you know, because she just wasn't ready yet. And what's also cool about it is that swamp now, that doe group comes into estrus that same week every year. I mean, it's like clockwork. All the cameras in there go off every time, every year, that same week. If I go sit there and there's good weather, I mean, I'm going to get a shot at something. So
wow.
I don't know if you ever had that happen with the doe where you can kind of get the doe to come in a little bit, but it worked. It worked this time. Who knows if it'll ever work again?
Well, I mean, that's what makes these kinds of hunts interesting. In that is something unique that happened, or, you know, just you kind of thought outside the box. What can I do in this situation here to make this happen? So it's very cool.
Yeah.
Dan, you got any thoughts on this buck? Or him hunting out of the same tree, getting 2 bucks out of the same tree?
got spots where we've gotten a dozen out of the same tree between me and my friends. I mean, you get in a good bedding area, and that's the way it is.
Sure.
We have a hard time killing mature bucks year after year in the same spots. Usually, you end up with the 3-year-olds and stuff after the big one. But our spots are a little more isolated. I could see that happen by Pat.
Mm-hmm.
The way that laid out, looking at it as woods, it was really. I mean, I could see it was intriguing me. Like I'd like to dive into something like that for a season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was kind of like I could read how Pat was reading it when he got us in there. It was like, holy crap. I mean, I could see how you could kind of see how the deer would pattern through there. And I could see how it would take work. Your average guy ain't going to walk in there and do that in an afternoon or even a week-long hunt. He's going to have to get in there in the spring or the winter, walk around, look at the trails, look at the funnels, look at how the deer are going through there when he's not harming his hunting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Pat's doing that, finding the sheds and stuff. I mean, I love that Laurel stuff after getting in there with Pat and having him explain it from his point of view.
Yeah.
Following the sign, or just identifying the sign, was just kind of a different experience too than what we often see, depending upon here in the Midwest, whether you're hunting hill country or the swamps or whatever. But I mean, you kind of had to really pay attention, and I can definitely see how you're a big shed hunter. I mean, you're really big into the shed hunting and wanting to find these sheds. And do you do that in a way to help identify the bucks in the area, or is it because that certain bucks are in the area and you just weren't maybe able to get on them this season?
It's a combo. Yeah, it's kind of both. So if it's a new area I haven't been before, I'd love to get in there and see who survived, who made it, who could potentially be someone I could try to get on for the next year. But in spots where I have a good inventory already of the deer, I love to be able to learn more. I've used the cameras in the off season to specifically shed hunt. So when the season's over and everyone else is, laid up and relaxing, I'm waiting for snow to fall, and I'm letting the snow sit down on the ground for 2 or 3 days. And I'm finding those feeding areas where the deer are, where the bucks are. And you can tell where the bucks are feeding because you'll get in there, and in the snow, you'll see the indentation that their racks will leave in the snow when they're feeding, so they'll be in the acorns. You'll see the mark from their rack in it. And even through that, sometimes I can tell by how wide the rack is if it's one of the deer specifically I'm looking for. So I'll throw a camera up at that point, leave it sitting for a week or two, and then just keep exploring. And every time I find one of these feeding areas, I'm dropping a camera on it to see who's in there and, when they drop too. Because there's other guys that are shed hunting as well in the area and have dogs and whatnot. So you're trying to get a jump on those sheds ahead of time for multiple reasons. One, I don't want some other guy who just happens to be shed hunting the area to do what I'm doing and stumble across a big set of 160 or 70 sheds and then decide he's going to be in there hunting for the year. So I try to clean up the mess per se. And then two, I just love to have that history and that story with them. I love to be able to have a piece of that deer over time and then see if I can get it done. Usually if I can get both of your sheds the year after, you might be in a little trouble.
That's awesome.
Sometimes, as you guys know, they don't always drop them together. I've had a couple where I've found one shed and the other one's been 4 miles away. So there's a lot of learning that can happen between 4 miles of woods. You can figure out where the scrapes are, where the runs are, where they're traveling through the laurel, where they're bedding, and just kind of putting all that stuff together.
A lot of people are probably thinking that the odds are stacked against you, and they probably are. But I know what you're saying about the sheds, because like for me, it's when I get eyeballs on one, I see them physically while I'm hunting, that deer is dead. I mean, I put the time in, I go find that deer, I hunt them down. It's like it gives you a boost of energy, and it's almost like you will it into your sight picture. You end up getting a crack at that deer. It's like I get that eyeball, you get those sheds, and you're like you're on them.
Yeah, and it's funny for me, man. I'm just not as good at seeing them in the woods unless it's like hunting time. Like I'll be with my buddies and we'll be walking through the woods and someone will see a deer move before I do, but I'll see a shed friggin' 300 yards away sticking up. But for a lot of these deer, the first time I see them is when I kill them. I've never, I haven't had multiple encounters with too many of them other than their sheds and trail cam pictures. But when I see them in real life, I usually close the deal or whiff, one or the other.
Awesome. All right. You ready to move on to buck number 3? Dan, you go with that?
Well, why don't we? What you didn't talk about is when you first spotted the deer and it walked by and you put the arrow in, and then your recovery. Can you go into that a little?
Sure. Okay, so this one here is the one that came with the doe and followed the doe with 4 other bucks behind it running through the swamp. I screamed at it. It stopped. Let the arrow fly, and he kind of kept for a second. He followed exactly where that doe went under my tree, and then he hooked her right and went back into the swamp. And this was, like I said, this was my first good buck. So at that point, there was some blood shows up really nice on the laurel, by the way, and there was some blood that I could see on the laurel a little bit, but he disappeared into the grass of the swamp, and I waited probably 45 minutes and called up a couple of my buddies before I even got down, and then we got down and we're following the blood a little bit. I'm trying to be careful. I'm looking at every leaf of it and seeing if there's bubbles or not. And I'm just really, this was a younger me at the time, and I was really trying to learn every bit of it and didn't want to spook him or anything like that. And walked probably about 60 yards into that swamp and with one of my buddies, and we're literally following every droplet as it's going, and we tripped over it. He was just right there laying in the grass. And the recovery of this one wasn't fun. I thought that, like I told you, I walk 1.5 miles around the back of the swamp and then drop down a big ravine and walk a cliff edge to get in there. I knew that dragging the deer out that way was going to be hell. So I figured just dragging them across the swamp and just taking the path of least resistance through the swamp would be the way to go. This deer dressed weighed 220 pounds. So me and my buddies, it was a great idea for the first 100 yards till we started getting into the blowdowns, and there were blowdowns the entire way. So you're dragging the deer, and then you get it to a blowdown that's 3 feet high, and then we got to lift it up over that blowdown and then go another 20 feet and then over another blowdown. So we got about halfway through that drag with my buddy Marcus, who you met at Huntstock, and it was a hell of a drag. I think that one took 5 hours, and it was probably, to the truck, is probably less than 3/4 of a mile as the crow flies from the stand. You have to walk way around, but yeah, that blowdowns aren't fun to drag deer through.
That terrain alone is also very rocky too. I mean, we were going through that one section, and I'm like, this would be hell trying to get a deer out of here, and then to have to. There's no path of least resistance. You're either gonna have to drag it that much further, or you're gonna have to go through some laurel in that too. And like you said,
pick your poison.
Everything's gonna get tangled up. Legs are gonna get tangled. The antlers are gonna get tangled. It's brutal stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So this one I learned my lesson on. The buck before that we showed that I told you we got out of the same tree. I luckily by that point developed a decent relationship with the guy who runs the water department for the public land piece that I was on, and I called him up and he opened the gate, and then my buddy came in with a 4-wheeler and we were able to get that one out easier, right through the back end. But that was the only time I got that lucky after that. But yeah, that was he was a great learning deer for me for sure.
I'm going to pull up a question here from Ronald. What do they have to eat in the laurel? I mean, I think you mentioned that they actually will browse on the laurel as well, but what other food sources are they looking at?
There's a lot of oak trees and whatnot. So the laurel is just kind of like an undergrowth, right? It's it can live in the same places. Like picture an oak flat where you are, where there's oak trees, but you just got all this undergrowth that can be waist high to 10 feet high that just grows in the same area. So they have the oaks. If it happens to be a year where there aren't acorns, I find that they eat these things called tea berries, which we all tasted a little bit of on Monday. Yeah. Wonder if that's what got you sick, Dan. Could it be the tea? Are you allergic to tea berries?
No, the tea berries were fine. The holly was really good too.
Yeah, the holly's good. That's a good. You usually only have to eat that once. Just eat that once.
You only eat that once.
Yeah. There's anything that they browse on, there's maples, there's, they got regular browse stuff, but the laurel just kind of provides cover, and it's kind of like a blanket beneath the canopy of the regular woods.
Okay.
So, is there a certain elevation or certain sides of the hill that laurel grows on? Certain places you look for it?
It seems like it grows in acidic soil and kind of rocky soil. So shit soil is where it grows, traditionally. I haven't noticed that it grows less or more on certain elevations or not. What I have noticed is that where water flows, just like anything else, or where there's high traffic, the laurel won't grow. So, if you find a nice steep ravine and it's a drainage, that'll be a nice clear path that'll funnel the deer, but also can double as a way for you to kind of enter and exit some of these areas, and find out where they're crossing through that.
Steve wanted to know who's Holly, but all right. Let's move on to buck number 3 here. And this one dates back a little bit, huh?
This one might even be, it's either before or right after that other one, but that other one was archery season. This one's a cool story. This is actually muzzleloader season, out hunting with my brother, and I had been in this area the day before, and I jumped 2 good bucks. There was a little bit of snow on the ground. I was following some runs in. I knew the area pretty well, and I went in there, and I heard 2 good ones get up and take off, and I just got a quick glimpse of the racks. But there was, as you guys saw on that laurel, you can't see too much. If something's moving, you're hearing stuff, and you're having premonitions the whole time and thinking you're mirages of what looks like huge deer. So that happens, and the next day, my older brother was available, and I was like, "Hey, we got to go do the same thing again," because I find that if a buck bedding area is set up right and you scare a buck out of there and they survive, I feel like the game isn't over at that point. If it worked for them and they survived and they just kind of heard something or whatever and they got out of Dodge and they didn't get hurt or see you or whatever, I feel like they say, that worked, and they continue to go back to that bedding area, So I go back the next day and I do the exact same thing, but this time I told my brother, "Hey, creep in here, get to the edge of this swamp. When you see where the stream tightens up, just wait in that area and then be ready." So I do the exact same move that I did the day before. And like clockwork, I get to almost the same area. I hear them get up. I hear crashing through the laurel. About 10 seconds later, I hear a boom. So I'm excited. I'm like, yes, my brother got one. I go over to see him. He confirms exactly what I said the day before. He said, I shot one, but the one behind it was even bigger. So I know the area better than him. So he decides he's going to give it a second and then let me kind of get around the ridge and try to see if I can catch up with the other one. And he's going to get on this blood trail and try to follow it up. So I scoot around and I get up into an area, and I get to an area where I know that the deer haven't crossed yet. I can see I've kind of skirted the edge. I know the woods enough. There's no tracks coming out of there. So they're still in where my brother's going to be coming through in a second. So I just wait in a nice area where it's kind of a pinch point. And after about 15 minutes, I hear something, and then sure enough, here comes a big buck coming through, and I shoot it and drop it. It ends up being this deer. I walk up to it. It's only got one antler on one side. So I'm like, oh crap. And when I walked up to it, it took a last breath. I don't know if I told you guys this story, but it took a strange breath that reminded me of when my father had passed away. So it was like it was just a strange experience at that time when I watched this deer pass away. And eventually my brother comes walking through, and I didn't realize at the time that it was the same deer. He's like, it's the same buck, So I had just finished off the one that he had already shot. So it made it cool that we both contributed. So we made a deal and said, this was like the last day of the season. We said, all right, we're going to go back and try to look for this other antler the next day, and whoever finds it gets to keep the mount, So we spent the entire day kind of scouring this area and didn't find the antler. The last 5 minutes of the day, we're sitting down, kind of defeated, drinking a water on our way out, and my brother looks over and says, "Holy shit!" And the fucking thing just happened to be like right where we were sitting. You know? Like after looking all day, it's right there. So he grabs it, he wins the deal, and gets to buy the mount, which is right back here, actually. So right over there, that guy right there.
Okay.
So something crazy about it, not deer related, not to be too much of a spiritual weirdness or whatever, but the picture that you couldn't get up here, if you look at it closely, I noticed something weeks later in the fur on it, and I'm like, what in the heck is that? And it looked like a face, and ironically, that face resembled like an old classic picture in my family of my father, so it just kind of wove that all together. And my father had passed away probably 6 years before this, so for us to learn hunting from my dad, to go hunting the same day, for us to both shoot the same deer, for us to go looking for the sheds and then eventually find the shed together, and then for me weeks later to be looking at the picture and see that there's a resemblance in the shadow of this old grainy picture that resembled that. It was just kind of a cool story for us. And that memory is awesome. But essentially I apparently killed my dad if he came back as a buck. So
it's like he was letting you know he was there with you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny. He used to always joke. He'd be like, if I come back as a deer, you better not fucking shoot me. Sorry, Pop.
That's going to be my punishment. I'm coming back as a deer.
Yeah.
God, from my killing. Try evading people like you now.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. But yeah, that was a muzzleloader deer, which Dan's going to get to experience some Massachusetts muzzleloader season this year. And so don't shoot the does, man, because sometimes they end up being bucks. Actually, when I went to drag it like an idiot, I know now not to do that. But if you ever shoot a deer that happens to have already shed one antler, a good idea is not to think you can grab it by the rack to pull it the rest of the way, because then you're leaving the woods with a doe and a shed antler.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I grabbed and just popped right off, and I was like, oh well, all right, we'll have a good time explaining this to the warden.
Right. Yeah, I have a number of friends that's happened to over the years with late season stuff.
Yeah.
But, talking about your brother, I used to hunt with this guy named John Gillis. He's still around. I see him every now and then. But this is, way back in the 80s. And we went scouting one time, and we're going to just look for shed antlers. And I found, we walked together, and I found 7 shed antlers, and he didn't find any. And I'm holding all these sheds, and he's like, how do you keep finding them? And at one point, he's standing there going, I can't believe you're seeing all these sheds, and I can't see them. And he's going on and on and on. And I look at the ground, and he's standing on one.
That's
I said, I hate to do this to you, but you're going to have to move your foot. You're standing on a shed.
That's hilarious.
And that day, I found the biggest shed I ever found. He was walking up the trail, and I saw it just as he was about to step on it. And he looked at it, walked around it, and just kept walking. And I'm like, what the heck? So I go, yeah, you missed something. I pick it up, and he goes, I thought it was a stick. And I don't even know how you could think it was a stick. It was a giant white shed antler, and it was giant, but
he thought it was a branchler.
Some people don't,
And that doesn't get you all fired up when you pick up a big shed like that, Dan, to say, oh, this guy's still in here. I got to get him.
Not as much as you. I mean, I like it.
Yeah.
A lot of times I don't even take them home. Unless it's a big one, just leave it there for somebody else or the animals or whatever.
Yep. Put them up in the tree for squirrels.
Yeah.
Pat, you and I actually talked a little bit. You showed me a Facebook page. Did you start that, the branchler?
Branchlers? Yeah. Me and a couple buddies started that because there's times where your heart will get pumping. I've run across a ridge to go find a friggin' stick, I'm like, oh yeah, filming myself like a moron. Like, look at this one.
Yeah.
And,
well, that laurel, especially.
It looks just like it.
I mean, you were scrolling through some pictures showing me. I'm like, yeah, I would have been running over to that as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The Branchlers Facebook page is getting pretty popular because anybody who shed hunts has had that experience before where you think it's one, but it's not, It's fun. You still get that quick little hit of dopamine, like you
right. It's true. Yeah, you do.
There you go. Steve knows what's up. The branchler.
Yeah.
Oh
the
yeah.
branchler. That's great.
Awesome.
Anything else you want to touch on buck number 3 before we move on to buck number 4 here?
No, that was a late season buck who, just happened to be in a kind of a bedding feeding pattern that I knew that was kind of a wintering area. That southern part of this swath of woods, the southern part of this area of woods tends to be a lot of pines and balsam firs and stuff like that. And in the wintertime, the thermals, that kind of stays warmer for them and there's less snow in there. So if we have a heavy snow year up here in the Northeast, those areas tend to have a little bit less snow on the ground, and it allows the deer to have a little less trouble getting to the food and the acorns that might be under it. So this particular area was kind of a nice blend of pine and oaks together. So in those
Sure.
situations, if there's a foot and a half of snow on the ground and maybe it rained today and it's crunchy and icy and the deer have a lot of trouble digging through that to get to the acorns, in these areas where there's more pine and it stays a little warmer, the snow's a little softer and there's less of it, so they can get to that food a little easier. So this late season, I had known that they tend to winter kind of on that southern part of this patch of woods, and just happened to go in there because of that. So once again, that year round scouting knowledge and just putting the pieces of the puzzle together, you never know when you're going to need that piece. Makes sense.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to buck number 4 here.
This was a cool one. This was actually, I think, 2 years ago, maybe. This is probably my most recent good buck here. I think he's in the back here somewhere. He's somewhere hung up over here.
Right.
Yeah, he's behind us. Yeah, that one was a cool one. This is a different area. Same sort of terrain with the laurel, but this is on like a really, a steep hill. Like the climbing in the morning, there's no way to get in there without being sweaty. So this is a cool area because I identified it using different satellite imagery. I was able to look by taking off some leaf imagery stuff and seeing that there were some nice runs through the laurel in this particular area. And on top of it, just the way the terrain was, this is almost like a 2,000-foot elevation, and it's up really high, and there's one side of it is like a sheer cliff drop off. So they're never, ever going that way, So I would come up literally on that sheer cliff drop off side where the wind is blowing my scent off of this cliff. And I kind of walk up and skirt the edge of that. And then I would cut into this patch of woods where I knew that they would just naturally have to go, because they're not gonna go up or down this sheer cliff. So they're going to be kind of going back and forth, and it slopes more gently off the top. But once again, it's oaks and laurel mixed, and there just happened to be a nice couple sets of runs that kind of connect to a saddle and a little swamp back there. So I'd been in there scouting before. I just noticed that there was the not only the terrain features, but the food was there, the cover was there, the vastness and remoteness was there, because I like to get away from people. Another probably mile or so hike in, and a lot of it is that elevation. So you end up sweating like heck going in there, and you can't even get in the tree without being wet getting in there. But it doesn't matter, just because of the fact that the wind is perfect. That northwest wind is taking my scent off that cliff, and if something does happen to get behind me, in between me and that cliff, I'm going to get a shot before they wind me. So I'm not worried about it. But yeah, I'd been hunting this other deer in there for a couple of days. That was a beautiful buck I called the Ridge Runner, and I'd been in there in the morning, and I saw him early in the morning. This was an all day sit. I saw him early in the morning with a doe hanging out probably about 150 yards away from me, just kind of walking this ridge, and they were feeding, and then they'd get up and sit down, and it just happened, a couple times throughout the day. They got up again at noontime. Then they moved off, and I thought they were done. And I grunted probably 20 minutes before last light, just to try to, see, throw a Hail Mary at them. And I just let out three little soft grunts in that direction. And it was like this is the time of day. And it was like you could hear a pin drop in this patch of woods. So I knew that sound traveled super far. After a little while, I start hearing a little bit of crunching here and there, and the doe came through, and she was feeding under me, but this buck was nowhere to be seen. And probably about 5 minutes before last light, he ended up getting up out of the laurel. He was watching her the whole time, and he made his way towards me, and I had about a 20-yard chip shot right in front of me. But unfortunately, he decided to. Sometimes you'll set up in a spot, Dan, and you'll say, all right, if I climb up the hill early in the morning and I'm way up high in this area, at least all I have is a downhill drag if I get a good one up here.
Yeah.
Unless they run down the other side of the mountain, then you got to drag them up over the hill and then down the other side, which was the case in this one. So he ended up running right into the laurel, which they do. They head right for that cover when they hear danger. And I heard him crunching for a ways. And I thought I had a bad shot on him at that point. I felt like it was a good shot, but you're always questioning after the arrow's released. You're like, was it perfect? Was it not? If they don't drop right away.
Right.
And he ran right into that laurel. I heard him crunching. I just heard the crunching get further and further and further and further away. And I was like, shit. Gave it about a half an hour and ended up following the blood trail down, and he died at the bottom of the hill, and that wasn't a fun drag either. But luckily we kind of skirted around it. As you can see here, it's a little more open. But yeah, great deer. Never had a shed of this deer. Never seen that deer before. Never had it on camera. That's what I like about this particular area too. It's kind of a transition piece between multiple patches of big woods. This is kind of a smaller parcel that's overlooked, and it seems to hold some good deer, and they you just never know who's going to show up. This is a great example of that. Good deer, nice solid mass, decent time length.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool buck. But yeah, no special tactics on this one other than once again just kind of understanding where they're going to be and where people aren't going to. I try to, I'll use my cameras for that too. If I have a camera in an area and I'm getting like people on it, I don't even bother going in there ever. But luckily for me, the majority of the spots I'm in, I hardly ever get another human on the camera. So that's another part of the reason I use it, is it lets me know that I'm alone in here. There's no other guys in here hunting or stinking it up or whatnot.
It may be more basic, but there's definitely tactics in there that people can learn from. Because I think your average guy ain't really thinking too hard about coming in the back way, climbing this cliff to get up there without leaving scent and stuff. You're obviously going in there in a way to kill this buck well out of your way. And I think your average guy is just going to walk through the crap and go straight there and do more damage than he understands doing.
Yeah. I think that I like to get deep in the bedding areas, or as deep as you can without disturbing it too much. You want to take the risk of getting in there, but you don't want to walk all the way through it. So if the bedding area is 100 yards wide, you don't want to walk 60 yards into it. You know what I mean? You want to kind of get right on the edge of it, or just tucked just in enough so your scent's blowing out of it.
About 7 steps before detection.
Yeah, that's about right. That's a pretty accurate depiction, man. But yeah, making sure that I've always been sensitive of my entrance and exit. More so entrance. Exit sometimes, I feel like you can get away with a little bit more on your exit. I'll sometimes be loud leaving on purpose. Once I get down and I'm out of my tree and I'm a decent ways away, there's hiking trails in this area. So I'll have a conversation with myself and kind of talk on the phone and just kind of make them think that it's just some guy hiking out of the woods. Because I think that they definitely can sense the difference between someone pussyfooting around in the woods and just stumbling through. Because, I've been in the woods with my kids before, just kind of fumbling through, and then you'll catch a deer just still as a statue watching you, and they're not moving or anything. But if you're in there and you're slowly creeping, if they think you're a predator, they're going to act as though they're prey, so they don't feel like you're a threat.
I agree 100%. Like it's very similar to like rabbits too, right? If you keep moving and you're not acting like a prey animal and you're just kind of ignoring them, They don't react. Rabbits, you stop and start staring at them, they're going to bolt right away. And I think deer are very much the same way. They'll just kind of keep an eye on you, and especially at nighttime. You know, they're not going to, I don't think they quite sense you the same way as they do. Obviously, they're smelling you and that. But if you're just kind of passing through and it's an area where there's hiking trails and stuff like that, anyways, they're not going to overly react as if you're trying to tiptoe through. Then they feel like they're being hunted.
Yep.
Dan, you have any thoughts on that?
Me?
Yeah. No, the other Dan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, you know, it's no different than people. I mean, if you start following a person and creeping on them, or you're walking, I mean, you're gonna get noticed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in places where you're sitting there and your peripheral picks up somebody staring at you, and you know what's going on. You know,
Yep.
you lock on that stuff. Deer are the same. I mean, if it creeps you out, it'll creep a deer out. I mean, they're not totally stupid.
No. I think they're just. I think deer are just masters of their instincts, and I don't think they're really thinking about stuff per se. I think it's just they master their environment and their instincts, and the quicker you realize and understand that, the better of a hunter you'll become by just knowing their tendencies and knowing how they're wired.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. What's the longest either one of you have ever been stuck up in a tree in the evening because you got a buck or something right underneath you after dark? Or do you just get down?
I'll give it 15, 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour, and then I'm out of there. I'm not sitting there all night.
Yeah, I very rarely have that. I think when I was younger, I had that a little bit when I was stupid enough to hunt food sources and stuff and food plots and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you get bucks stuck underneath you or something that you want to shoot. But if it's not a target animal, I could give a crap. I can't believe how many people tell me they stay in the tree until the does and bucks and small bucks and stuff leave. Who cares? You hunting that deer?
Yeah,
I don't even want them to come back the next day. If they scoot out of their bad, I'm glad.
The closer you are to the bedding, the less that happens. You know what I mean? They're just
Right.
kind of moving through. That's where you want to get them. You want to get them on that move through. And the big ones, especially, at least in my area, a lot of the real old ones, like one of the bucks we'll get to here at the end. I mean, they're so cautious, and they'll wait till that last 15 minutes of light to really make any strides in moving too far. You hear them just one step, two step, three step, pause. They're very aware of their environment, whereas the younger ones are just kind of flopping around. That's why they end up in the freezer so often.
Right.
Quite
I mean,
often, I'll hear or see my target buck get up in bedding like an hour and a half before dark, and by the time they get 75 yards to me, it's closing time. I'm taking that shot right before closing time.
Oh yeah, it's crazy how calculated and slowly they'll move, and how. I mean, same way as you. If you came home today and you smelled some dude's cologne in your living room, who the hell was in here? What the hell is this? Same thing for them, man. It's like they know their environment so well, and they're super cautious exiting it.
I mean, I agree wholeheartedly, but I mean, and I guess anything can happen at any time. You could have your target buck that decided to get up just a little bit late, and he is really close. And you're going to run that risk of blowing him out of that area, right? I mean, or blowing him out that night, or busting your spot, or are you educating them, to that spot?
I think it's Dan. I wonder how you think about this. I felt like in some areas I've been in there in certain bedding areas throughout the year a lot, to the point where I'm not so cautious about not touching anything, because I wonder if they smell you a little bit and there's no danger that happens, especially in areas where there's public land and there's trails nearby and whatnot. I just wonder if they've smelled your scent 25 times and nothing bad's ever happened. They smelled it in the wintertime with you shed hunting. They smelled it again in the summertime. Like they smell it, but they don't associate it yet with danger. I just wonder if that plays into anything. And I think that obviously different areas, if there's a higher human potential in the area and there's a lot of trails and stuff, they're probably a little more lenient with that stuff. I know when you get into the really remote areas, anything that's sort of foreign might, send up the radars. But
Yeah,
in
I
some of
think
these,
that those deer all have different personalities.
yeah,
I found some big bucks are real aggressive, could care less you're there. I mean, they're not going to stand underneath you and let you shoot them, but they'll kind of skirt around you, let you leave, and come back. And there's some deer that'll smell you and want to get the hell out of Dodge.
yeah, that's true.
And it's just a matter of their personalities. But I think the place you have the most impact on a mature buck is around their bedding. You get into places where people aren't supposed to be, and they freak out a little bit. It's kind of like coming home, and if there's bear tracks in your yard, you're like, holy crap, there's a bear in my yard. But you go in your house and they're in their kitchen coming through the window, you're going to freak out.
Yeah.
And you're basically crawling through their window into their kitchen. So I think it does some damage, personally.
Yeah. Suburban Hunt Suburbia chime in with a comment here. Suburban areas, they are a little more lenient on human scent, especially the younger ones. Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, for sure. I agree 100%. I live in a suburban area and I walk past the same does and fawns and small bucks and even some larger bucks on a fairly regular basis. And they are super tolerant of people, super tolerant.
So some of the suburban areas that I hunted were like semi-suburban, had hiking trails and stuff, like the conservancies and stuff where the tree huggers would walk down a trail through the area. And I learned that if I set trail cameras or I hunted right off of the trail, I could hunt those spots over and over and over again and have the same big bucks come through. And but if I went off that trail 20, 30 feet, and those deer smelled me, they'd relocate.
Yeah.
They'd get used to exact spots you could be in. Like
Sure.
they're used to that. And if you've ever walked down into a hunting spot, which we all have, and you're walking the path that everybody takes, and at some point you cut off, right? But you're going down that path. How many times have you watched a deer walk across that path nonchalant, like smell the ground a little bit, just keep going and not really care, even though there's people walking up and down that trail all day long? But you walk in the woods where you don't belong and they react a whole different way.
Yep. Yeah. Why is he here? And that goes back to, what I was saying before. Sometimes I've spent a lot of time in some of these bedding areas, probably way more than I should have. And, I feel like I've become a little bit more tolerated. Like they don't know the difference between did they say, is there a new trail here or is this guy just here every day? Like they don't, sense that. So,
a deer can smell the difference between a person, two people. They can smell the difference between me and you. We're going to both smell different. Just like a dog who doesn't even smell near as good as a deer can track an individual person who runs through a crowd.
Yeah,
that deer knows your smell. It's why he'll tolerate a farmer that he sees all the time.
Right.
When some new hunter comes there, he freaks out, and you're like, well, how does the farmer drive right up to him on the tractor?
Yeah.
That's why.
I often wonder too if they can sense the difference between a vegetarian and a who eats meat. The reason I say that is I have a little sister who's a raw vegan, and I swear this chick could walk into the woods and ride a deer. She doesn't eat anything but like nuts and berries and shit. She goes to the bathroom and it looks like she left sticks and she could probably literally go pet deer. But get a guy like us that's sweating friggin' venison. Does something to him.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my God. No, it's funny. And just to go in a little bit further to like some of like the farmer stuff. I remember talking to Lee Lukowski one time, and it's a completely different style of hunting and stuff. TV show hunting and running, over 100 cameras and checking feeding sites and having hundreds and hundreds of acres of food plots. He was convinced that the deer tolerated his scent at all these camera sites just because he was constantly out there. And it makes sense to an extent when you equate that or relate that to what it's like hunting in suburban areas where they're used to human scent to to an extent, as compared to maybe something in the Northwoods, whether Northwoods of Wisconsin or the Northwoods of the Northeast there, where they just have very little human interaction. There's got to be some differences there.
Yeah.
Let me tell a quick opposing story.
Yeah.
So I used to scout a lot of people's properties for them on the side for money. And I still do it occasionally, but not near as much because it takes away from my own stuff. But I had several. This is just one example. I've had several of these. But this guy calls me up and asks me to look at his property. I go there, and he's got about 200 acres. And he says he's struggling because his neighbor, like this old guy, the guy's like 80 years old. And 2 out of the last 3 years, he shot Boone and Crockett's sitting on a bucket on opening day of gun season. He only hunts gun season. He only hunts opening weekend. And he's shooting better deer than this guy. And this guy wants to improve his deer. He says he's not even getting a deer like that on his camera. So the next question is, well, how many cameras do you have? And he had something like 120 of them on his property. And he said he had one of the big scouting people out there. And I went out there and looked at what this professional guy, I'm not going to say his name and embarrass him, but did to his property. And we get up on a ridge that should be bedding, and he's got this giant scrape thing going down this bedding area. It's like a rope with a rope attached to it. And he's got like 100-acre scrape, and he's got like a playground for the deer. And he's out there every day checking these cameras and stuff on an ATV, taking the same route so he doesn't disturb the deer. And he says he only gets, 2-year-olds, the occasional 3-year-olds on film. And he's got cameras everywhere. He knows what's on the property. Why is this guy killing all the deer? And I said, simply because you're out there all the time, every day, working on crap. So it's kind of the opposite of what you're giving for an example.
Right.
They can get used to you, but you don't want to really push the limits.
Yeah, you don't want to have them feel like you're in the way, like you're about to build a house there. You know what I mean? For sure. Yeah.
You got to get the intel you need, and then come back for the kill, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree 100.
More intel, you spend more time and you take the risk, but you got to have that intel. But once you've got that intel, you don't have to just keep locking it in by keep walking out there and say, "Ain't this amazing?"
Right. No, I agree with you 100%, Dan. And more often than not, the tolerance level is going to be with those 1.5, 2.5, 3.5-year-old bucks in that. But once you get beyond that, when you start getting the 4, 5, 6, they have very little tolerance for human intrusion in their area, especially if it's anywhere close to their bedding. It's a completely different ball game.
But on Pat's behalf, and you can tell me if you agree, Pat, these older bucks kind of lock down in an area, and it's really hard to kick them out of it.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different ball game when you start getting to 6, 7-year-old deer. A lot of time, those real old bucks, you can't make them leave a bedding area. But the bedding area is going to be very
a fortress.
tough.
Yeah, it's a fortress for him. Yeah, that's pretty much was the situation with the last deer on my list, man. Is that he just had a fortress, and it took a while to figure it out. But if you get into that older age range, man, for sure that the home base shrinks a ton, and there's a reason that they've survived there, and it's not just because nobody goes in there. It's because people might go in there, but he knew you were coming way ahead of time and boogied out of there, and it's worked for him since his mom taught him about it. That's why I really think that the hardest deer to kill in the woods is the nanny doe, that matriarch doe that if you think about it, the matriarch doe is the one teaching all of these young bucks where and where not to be, so there, some of those nanny does, man, those are the ones that are blowing at you from 100 yards away, that you just hear them, you never see them,
Yeah.
All right. A real quick question here from Bram Olson. Dan and guest, Pat, would it hurt to make a point to never hunt the same spot this season more than once, no matter what? Bow hunting only, 40 to 50 hunts, public only.
Go ahead, Pat.
I'm not sure I fully get that.
You want me to pull it up?
I think
He's
that
saying he never wants to. Is it a good idea to never hunt the same spot twice, no matter what?
Oh,
Right.
yeah, never. No, I wouldn't say that. I would say I'm a firm believer now, and I will sit if I believe in a spot, I'm gonna sit there until I either know that I ruined it because I whiffed, or I watched the target that I wanted come in and smell me and run off in the other direction, or I get a shot at him. And 9 times out of 10, it's usually you're going to get an opportunity. So if you're not in the game, you're not gonna, if you're not taking shots, you're not gonna make shots. So I think it's worth being in the right situation as much as possible. I'm not. My setups are always. I try to set up clean so that I'm not what they say blowing out an area or hunting an area too much. If you set up correctly and you make sure that your entrance and exit is good and you're conscious of this stuff ahead of time, it matters less. If I know my wind's good all the time and I know that my entrance is good and I'm trying to kind of skirt around these feeding and bedding areas to just set up in the right position, I'll hunt the hell out of that. I'm going to hunt it until I get it done.
I'm just going to add this here. He chimed back in and said, I've sat in a spot all days, have only seen a mature buck on day one only every year. That's why he asks.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about that, right? I mean, your first sit in a particular spot or tree
is always the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it also could be, I would kind of reverse engineer that and say, all right, where did that deer come from? How did I access this spot? Where is my wind blowing? Was there anything did this deer get alerted in any way to my presence there? Did he somehow know I was there and that's why he's not back? I also find that some deer end up in, there's some transition areas where they might only be in that area one day, and cameras to me are a double-edged sword too, because I've had experiences where, and not to sidetrack, but this is just, you if you sat somewhere one time and you only saw that deer one time, and you might have to sit there for 6 days straight to really get a measuring of what's there or not. But I've had spots where I've had cameras in and the camera has told me that there's no deer there, but I've been sitting in the tree and watched 4 or 5 different deer go by, but they never walked in front of my camera. So if I sit somewhere and see a deer the first time, the first hunt is always the best, but that's not going to make me not hunt there again. I think the deer are kind of on a loop cycle where they'll be in one area for a day and then they're moving, and then they'll come back in a few days, or depending on how big that loop is that they might be making and what time of the year it is going to dictate that. So the time of year that you're hunting there is going to play a big role. If it's the rut, he might just be cruising through, but if it's earlier in the season and he's still attached to that early bedding feeding routine, he should, if you haven't alerted him, be back through that area a few more times anyway.
Right. All right, Dan, your turn.
I would say probably about 80% of my mature bucks have been first sit ever, and it would go up to 90 if you went up to like second sit. But the odds change when it gets below mature. When it gets to be like 3-year-old and younger, I've killed a lot of those on consecutive sits. Now, that's not to say I'm not arguing with Pat's logic, but I'm saying that a lot of the deer I hunt are ultra sensitive when you get near their bedding areas, and they hop around a lot to other bedding areas when I put pressure on them. But I've run camera studies and actually hunted in the spots where the camera studies were going on, and I've seen deer return like the next day or 2 days later quite often after I've given up on a spot. Like if I would have sat there for 3 days. But what I have noticed is when they come back again and they smell where you've been, they kind of disappear again. So it seems to me like the longer time period from when you first sat it, the worse it is, because your scent's going to stay there for a long time.
Yeah.
But if you hunted it 3 days in a row consecutive, to me that would be better than coming back a week later.
100%. That's what I say too. That's why I say I'll go into a spot and I'm just going to stick with it until I know that I've ruined it or I've seen them. And usually, like you said, you're going to get a crack at them, hopefully that first time, if not the second, So that's my logic, is just saying, if I believe in a spot, if I sit there the first time and see him and get him, then game over. But if not, I won't
go to a total different spot and then come back a week later to this. I want to burn that spot out. And usually for a deer with the cameras and stuff, for me, I'll know this is my most likely spot to kill him. But if there's pressure here, I know that he's going to retreat to this spot. So I'll stay here for as long as I can till he comes back. And then if nothing happens there, then I'll hop to the other one and do the same thing. But I've tried the whole hop here, hop there, because for me specifically, I'm usually hunting a specific deer. I'm targeting one specific deer. So, yeah, I think what you're saying is if you 3 days straight is better than doing a day and then coming back 4 days later for sure, because your scent's already there, and whether he smells it the first day, second day, or third day, hopefully
what
you.
the cameras show is that if you're in a preferred bedding area, he might be there that day and he might be back in 4 days. Then he might come back the next day, and then he might be gone 2 days. Because he's got a couple of little bedding spots. And if he hasn't come in and smelled you or detected you, and like you said, you're using bulletproof setups. I mean, if they're probably not 100% bulletproof, but you're really thinking about how you get in there and where you think that deer is going to move around. Right. But the cameras don't lie. And if you got, and I think you're running a lot of cameras where you hunt, right? Pat?
Yeah, I got too many. Yeah, I got.
So your cameras are telling you your impact to the area, so on your specific hunts the damage you're doing.
100%. Yep.
All right. Well, Bram, we hope that answers your question. All right, guys, we're going to get into buck number 5 right now. And this is a great one right here. And I think this is a story you guys are going to want to stay tuned for here. And there's a reason why I picked this one to be the last one, because this one's pretty incredible here. So I'm just going to go, Pat was nice enough to share a bunch of photos here, and we'll just get into the first pick here. And Pat, you can take it away whenever you want.
Yeah, this is a deer that as you can see all the sheds there, that taught me the most about hunting out of any deer ever. I had found a set of sheds in 2016 that was from this deer, and it took 2 years to even get a picture of him. And as you can see from that, picture before, he lived in the middle of the thickest laurel ever. But I spent years just obsessing over and over this deer, and there were several other people that knew about him, but I was lucky enough to just be able to close the deal on this beast. You can see in the background there how thick the laurel is. He died right in the middle of like that. He lived there. I mean, he had the damage on his, even on the mount of him, just from him living and walking through that stuff, like it kind of ruined his cape a little bit too. He had a lot of damage to it. But yeah, it took years of trying to figure out where this specific deer was actually living, because as you all know, food sources change every year, and that would dictate where he would go. So for the first couple of years, I was floating around and putting cameras places and just trying to get a glimpse of if this deer was still alive, because I found a set of sheds that were half chewed in September of 2016. And I just never got a picture. I never found another shed from him. But 2 years later, I ended up getting one picture. And that same year, I ended up finding one shed from the previous year. And that led me to spread out, and just that really got me into getting way more cameras than should be legal. I just kept buying cameras. It was like an addiction. I would buy cameras every week. I buy 2 more cameras and put them out in a new spot and just keep on filling them with batteries and just trying to figure out if I could just catch them one more time, and it turned into this cat and mouse game where I was hunting this deer all year long, with the cameras, during the season. I wouldn't get him often, until the final year where I finally got him. But like we say with the pieces of the puzzle, right? There were pictures I would get. I would have sheds, and I had this like map. If you look at my Onyx, it looks like a a mess. But
we caught a glimpse of it.
yeah, all of those pieces of the puzzle eventually made it happen, but you have to I had a lot of different pieces of evidence, and I had to zoom out and say, all right, I'm getting them here sometimes, and I'm getting them 3 miles away over here sometimes on these cameras. And this guy I know got them on cameras 5 miles this way. And it was hard because one year there'd be acorns, and then for 2 years there was no acorns. So I would be working with information based off of I found his sheds here on an acorn year, and I got pictures of him here because there's acorns, and then all of a sudden there's not acorns for 2 years, so his entire pattern would change, and he would be somewhere completely different, and his sheds would be 5 miles away. But eventually it started to all come together in 2021, and I had just I had had all these pictures and information over years, and it all led to this one kind of overlooked area in the middle, like right in the center of everything. So I would take one piece of that evidence, I would find a shed, and then when I found that shed, I would scout, 500-yard radius around that where that shed was, and I'd look for every scrape, every run, every rub, every bit of sign that I could possibly see. And on the best scrape that I would find in that area, I'd throw a camera up and see if I ever got them on it. And maybe I get them one time during the middle of the night or whatever. I kept rinsing and repeating that process for every bit of information that I had. Like if I had him on the camera at 2 in the morning and he was coming from a certain direction, the next time I had a chance to scout, I would go 200 or 300 yards in the direction in which he came from and do the same thing. I'd create another kind of 300, 500-yard perimeter and just start looking for the best sign in that area. And just over time, piecing all that stuff together, eventually I walked him back to his bedroom because I was starting getting pictures and videos and stuff closer and closer to daytime. And eventually it took a couple of years because I was he had dumped those first set of sheds about 3 or 4 miles away from where he really lived, because there was food there that year. But I walked it back, and then what I learned is that his core area where he really lived was so tight. I mean, it was probably a 300-yard radius in the middle of this mountain laurel on this one sort of knoll. And when I look at it now on a map and I look at everything, it all makes sense. But essentially, this deer was in an impenetrable area in kind of a bowl. Like everything kind of dumped in, and then there was a high point. So in the evening, all of the scent from all around, from any one of these food sources, would dump into this one area, and he would be able to choose which direction he wanted to go to based on food sources that year. So he literally, I don't think his bedding changed much at different times of the year. Like I had always thought up until this point that the fall bedding is entirely different than the summer bedding and all of that. And I always believed it. But what I learned with this specific deer is that his bedding area in the wintertime was the same bedding area that he used in the summertime. I had pictures of him in velvet in the daytime, bedding down. I had pictures of him the year before, once I got into his core area, laying in the bed right after he shed. He was laying in a specific bed without the antlers anymore, and I found the antlers probably 300 yards away from there. But then I would just continuously get him over and over and over again in the same really, really tight area. So I got lucky. I snuck in one day when the weather was right, and I had to trim trails for a few years and break branches to be able to get into this area specifically. And I had to do it from multiple angles. I kind of had a couple different access points because as soon as I would make one access point, the deer would start using that trail because it was so thick in here. They would turn it into their highway and how they would get in and out. So I had to kind of make a few different options of that and then choose the entrance, which was the one that they didn't like. And I snuck in there one day and hunted in the morning. There was all kinds of activity going on in there. I mean, it was like, that laurel's so loud that when the rut happens there, it just sounds like fireworks are going off around you. Everything's breaking. Everything's loud as hell. I mean, you think of how loud it is in a cold, crisp morning when the leaves are, after a little rain and the leaves are frozen, how loud it is and crunchy walking in. The laurel is that on steroids. So when a deer is even walking through it, it sounds like, fireworks going off, never mind multiple doe getting chased by young bucks everywhere. But I get in there in the morning. I'm sitting around. I had a picture of him on a cell camera. I was hunting there either way, but I had a picture of him the night before and at like 4 in the morning, going to right where I knew he was bedding. And I sat in there all day, nothing. About noontime, I had to leave to go get my daughters. I left, came back, sweaty as hell. But once again, I set up the spot to be, as bulletproof as it could be based on the wind that I was hunting. I knew my wind was blowing back in the direction I came. He wasn't there, or I would have stepped on him coming in. And the wind's supposed to be perfect the whole time. The last probably about half an hour of light, the wind switches, and now it's blowing directly at where he is. And if I would have known that the wind was going to do that, I would have never in a million years chose to hunt that stand. I would have just avoided it, because I know that wind is blowing exactly where I know he's bedding. I know where the beds are. It's like I just thought it was over. So I had, texted my buddies at that point as I'm sitting there, and I said, the wind just switched. I'm screwed. It's definitely blown where he is. He hasn't come out yet. This place was like a fortress, but somehow my wind must have just threaded the needle, and he must have been bedding just on the edge of where it switched. And I got to, I heard him for, like you said, Dan, I heard him get up for about 45 minutes before I actually saw him, and he just kept working his way. He'd go for a couple minutes, stop for a couple minutes, and work his way through the laurel, and it was loud as hell. I had no idea which deer it was until he was probably 75 yards away to my right. I look out of the corner of my eye, and I just see his rack going through, and after obsessing over a deer for 6 years and never laying eyes on it other than just a trail camera picture, actually holding your sheds, when I saw the side of the rack, I immediately knew who he was and knew which deer it was, but he was going away from me. And I was excited that I just finally laid eyes on him more than anything. And, he probably got 75, 100 yards away from me, and he's kind of paralleling this hiking trail and heading up to this food source that I know he goes to every night. And as he got away, I employed one of the same, kind of tactics that I told you guys before with one of my other deers. Is I said, all right, I got to try to call him in somehow. So I knew he was far enough away, and in this area, he wouldn't be able to see me at all. And they rely more on scent and sound in this area for sure. I know my wind's good at this point, because now he's beyond me, and the wind's. If he farted, I could smell it. You know what I mean? I would have been in perfect position for that. So I knew that there was no way in hell he was going to smell me. And with all the rut activity that was happening all day long in this area, with all the young bucks chasing doe around under me was happening all day, I knew that the story would make sense in his head, because he was bedded in this area. He knows that there's other bucks in the area and there's doe in the area and whatever. Most of the deer that I saw were young. There was nothing shootable besides him in this area, because this is the king of the woods in this area. So he's about 100, maybe 100 yards away, and he's walking away from me, and I hit the grunt tube just 3 times, soft but sternly. I wanted him to make sure he heard it. I waited for him. He would walk for a few minutes, stop for a few minutes, walk for a few minutes, stop. I waited to hear him walk, and once I heard him stop, that's when I hit him with it.
Sure.
He stopped for a few more minutes, and I started hearing the laurel and the crunching and stuff move, and I thought he just continued on his path. And honestly, at this point, I wasn't even mad. I was excited that I just finally laid eyes on this beast that I've been obsessing over for years. But the sound just started getting louder and louder and louder, and it's thick as heck in here. And I'm just trying to see any sort of movement so I can be prepared for the shot. And he, eventually I just start seeing his rack move, and he's coming, and he's almost directly coming at me, and he kind of quarters to. And if he goes 25 more yards, he's walking across the trail that I walked in on through this laurel that I was touching and had to get in there. So I know that if he hits that, he's going to know something's up, and I'm just going to hear all hell break loose, and he's going to go in the other direction. But he gave me kind of a quartering 2 shot. And looking back, I probably should have waited a little bit more for him to turn. But the excitement and the moment, and just realizing I may never have another chance. I may never see him again. there's other guys closing in on him. There's social media posts about this deer where guys are dropping pins about where he is, and all of this stuff is floating through my mind at one time. So I let it fly, and it ends up, kind of going right here, and I see it, and I know it's going to be a fatal shot, but he spins, and I just hear the loudest running for about 30 yards, then nothing. So I get down, and this is a good tactic. While I was up in the tree still, I tried to keep my composure for a second, and what I did is I replayed where he came from in my head, because this is all thick hell laurel, and it's not like I can say, all right, the birch tree that's next to the oak tree right there,
Right.
that, and he went this way, so I can go find where the blood was or where my arrow might be. I took a picture from the tree, and I held my camera up, and with my finger looking at the camera, I literally pointed one finger to where he was when I shot, and then I took the picture again, and I pointed to where I last heard him and where I think he dropped, just so I could have a reference point when I got down, and I could say, all right, that oak tree with the crutch in it right there, that's close to where I shot him at. Because, I get up high in my trees too. I'm probably 26 feet, 27 feet up in this tree, and things look entirely different when you're looking into the laurel from that high up compared to when you get to the ground and it's now above your head. You know what I mean? So that helped me. I ended up getting down, going to where I thought I shot him. I find the arrow, and it's just like it looks like somebody just dumped out gallons of blood. So at that point, I knew there was no way he survived. I luckily I chipped his heart, hit a lung, and came out the back without hitting the guts, which was lucky as hell. I think he died almost instantly. I think just his adrenaline dragged him that 30 yards where he just ran and crashed right into the middle of the laurel.
Sure.
And that was exciting to me too, knowing that he didn't suffer. You know what I mean? Like, because you develop a relationship with these deer.
Right. You have a history with them. Yeah.
Yeah. And that made it bittersweet too, man. For me, it was like, as I'm sitting there with this deer in the middle of the woods that I've obsessed over for years and have thousands of pictures and videos of, and have his sheds all over the house. And, I found his sheds, and then I'd lay in bed at night like a friggin' psychopath and just be like, giving the sheds a hand job, just obsessing over the moment of seeing it. And then when it finally happened and you walk up to it, it's incredible, but it also was bittersweet and sad. I felt like, a range of emotions. Part of it was like, did I really have to do this? Like, why, why, was this ego? Was this just because all the social media and everyone else saying you'll never get that deer? That deer it's nocturnal. No one's gonna get him. Was it all of that? So it was kind of a range of emotions, and it was sad, honestly, after that, because that shed season, I didn't have the motivation anymore, because I didn't have
Right.
I didn't have to put on 500 miles of scouting to go traipsing through this woods looking for his sheds, because I was so determined for the kind of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, per se, each season, trying to find and get on this deer more. But yeah, incredible journey. I think I learned more from chasing this deer than any other situation, and I don't think that honestly, I don't think I'll ever attempt to try to do that again. I've been humbled by that, to the point where now I just really try to be in the moment and enjoy the outdoors and enjoy the hunt and enjoy the experience and just enjoy it more than, this I obsessed so much about it that it was like a full-time job, and we've talked about it before. It puts stress on your family. I was choosing going scouting and checking cameras over, spending, taking my kids and swinging them for a little while at the park where I could have done stuff like that. And, so it taught me a lot of things. And one of them is to just enjoy the moment, and don't put so much pressure on yourself about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's some really true speak right there for sure. And I think there's a lot of guys that have gotten caught up with that. I mean, Dan, you've spoke on this over the years, and that I mean, you don't have regrets, but at the same time, you do have some regret. I mean, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change anything I've done.
Right.
It's made me who I am. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I didn't always make the best choices. But in the end, those choices were for a reason, and they shaped you and they sent you in a certain direction.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, you shouldn't regret it or whatever, but
Oh no, I
it's
don't.
important to be aware of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of your life, and your priorities as well too. So,
Yep.
but I mean, not to get into that subject, because I mean, this is an incredible buck and an amazing journey that you had getting after him.
Yeah.
It's
No.
just incredible. So,
Those are just normal emotions. I mean, he bonded with the deer. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
anybody who hunts that's as obsessive as me or Pat gets that. I mean, I understand that totally.
Yep. Yep. It was just one of those things where I just had this, just obsession. It was just relentless obsession for this one specific deer. I mean, I passed so many good bucks waiting for this one to come by. I was like, nope, you're going. But I wanted him so badly. So, and like I said, it was part of it was ego, part of it was my own ability. Like, can you do it? Push yourself to the limit. Can you make this really happen? Are you willing to put in the work? And that speaks to everything that you guys are about, right? If you really want it and you want to make it happen, you gotta go beast mode on it. And I absolutely went psycho for this deer. And I don't regret it per se, but it was definitely a bittersweet moment when I walked up to it at that time. It was like, oh man, no, I'll never get another trail cam picture. Every time the phone would go off, I'd be like, is he gonna be there? Is he gonna be there? Every time I'd walk around a corner and see a branchular, was it his shed? Was it, so just that. But I got a couple now that are starting to kind of give me the itch again too. So I'm starting to, a little bit of a rack head. It's like a crackhead, but just without the C.
It's almost like a surreal moment. It's hard to describe to somebody who hasn't experienced it, but when you're hunting an exact animal, it's almost like you're going to kill it. You're going to end up getting it. In the back of your mind. If you don't have that confidence, you're not going to do it. You
Yeah.
have to. Every one of us that does it has that.
And
still in the same part, when you actually finally seal the deal, it's like a surreal moment. Like, is this thing really going to go down? Is this really happen? How did this even occur? Like, you believe in it, but when it happens, you're like, did I really put all the pieces together and put myself in the one freaking tree in this entire forest where I could kill that deer? And it's a surreal moment. I mean, it's hard to explain.
Yeah. And for this one particularly, when I first found that set of sheds, it was a heavy sheds with kickers coming off it and a lot of palmation and stuff. So at that point in my area, I guessed, I was like, he's got to be 5.5 years old. It's got to be 5.5, and neither of these sheds, it was a couple years before these two, but And I was right too. So I sent the teeth out at the end. I'd guessed that he was probably 5.5 years old when I found the sheds. And when I finally killed him, my estimate was that he was 11.5 years old. And I had been on Pat's podcast talking about that previous to killing the deer. I was saying he was 11.5, and there were people chiming in the comments and stuff saying, oh, there ain't no deer that are 11.5 years old on public land out here. That's impossible. It's bullshit. Blah, 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 blah. Sent the teeth in, got the deer age results back, and sure enough, he was 11.5 years old, which is incredible for him to be able to live to that age. I mean, we think of a 4 or 5 year old as being a mature buck, but another part of the story that Pat brings up a lot too is that we also hear that deer go down. Their racks start going downhill with that age. So they'll say 5 or 6 years old is the peak rack of it, and I always believe the same thing. But with the research and the evidence and everything that I put into this deer and all of the camera work and the sheds that I physically have, I saw that the rack size maintained really well once he got to maturity, and it was more based on how good the food was that year. When there was an abundance of acorns a couple of the years, this deer held on to his sheds until middle of February. On a year that there weren't acorns, one year he literally dumped them at Christmas, the day after Christmas, because there was no acorns and he looked like hell. That year that he dumped them at Christmas, the next year his rack was probably the weakest. And then on the year that he held them until February, there was acorns and his rack was the strongest. So the year after that. So I think that once their body reaches that maturity level where their physical body stature and bone structure and muscle skeletal stuff is all fully matured, if there's a good food source and the genetics are there, I think all of that just goes right to their rack. And like I said, this is, one of my buddies killed probably his grandfather or father in the same patch of woods, and he had to be about the same age. And those old deer, just like his rack maintained that size. So I don't know. I don't know if you guys see that out your way, but I've always heard that, over time their racks just fall off. But I found multiple big ass deadheads that were probably 9, 10-year-old bucks that looked real, real good.
We had one out here that made it to 9.5, and I had a neighbor who had all of its sheds. Back in those days, you could feed, and that guy had a giant food pile in his yard, and he's in a perfect spot where all the deer wintered in the swamp, and he would get sheds for most of the deer, and he had all the sheds except for, I think he was missing 2 or something like that, from when like the thing was like 2 or 3 all the way up till it was 9. And at 9.5, it had its biggest rack, and every year the antlers got bigger. And I've seen deer with like, I shot one that was 7.5, and he was smaller than 6.5, but not much. I mean, it was, they're not dropping off into these small clubby antlers and stuff. And if they are, the deer's probably like 15,
Yeah. And he probably injured in some way or just not getting any of the nutrition. So, as long as his body's functioning properly and he's getting the proper nutrition and the food sources there, I think that they can. They can
nutrition is almost everything. I mean, genetics and then nutrition. I mean, if they don't have the nutrients in that to grow, those antlers are just not going to.
A lot of it has to do with where you're at too. I mean,
absolutely.
That's at, there's probably less food than there is where I'm at.
Right.
I got a lot of crops and stuff by me. I got a lot of food sources for deer, and that's going to give them better older lives, with nutrition. Mm-hmm. Where I understand what he's saying about a good year versus a bad year. I don't think I have too many bad years.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm at.
Yeah, a lot of crops, so they constantly have that food source. Yeah. Yeah, for us out here, it's those acorn years, those mass crop years tend to do better, and it's kind of a catch-22 too, because last year, for example, we had a bumper crop of acorns here where every ridge was just flooded. I mean, we were walking through the woods, it was like marbles from the previous year were still all over the ground because there were so many last year, but this year is a little more sparse, and I like the sparse years better because that way you have a better chance of getting on them, because if there's food everywhere and there's an abundance of food everywhere,
they're spread out.
They don't have to move around as much, or they don't.
Right.
They can just go wherever they want and roam and be fine. But
incredible buck, the electric buck. I don't know. It was kind of a long story. Did we touch on the reason why it was called the electric buck?
Yeah. It was the first picture I got of it. It looked like Einstein walking by.
Yeah.
I have this picture, and it's like fuzzy. It was a nighttime picture, and it's just like, I could tell it was him.
Tesla buck.
Yeah, I could tell it was him.
Tesla.
And ironically, not far from there was this big radio tower too. So it was just kind of a joke with me and my buddy who hunt the area. But
it's a great name.
But it stuck. You know what I mean? It stuck after it, and he's still got it. He made it in a couple magazines because of it. We gave him some justice.
Yeah.
Because otherwise some deer, and that deer would have probably just died of old age. Eventually, like it just like he didn't. I had to kill him. I had to go put effort in to kill him. He wasn't going to let himself be killed. You know what I mean? Like I had to really. There was a lot of work that went into just getting on him. He had his stuff down to a science. If you make it to 10 years old, the chance of you dying as a deer is probably pretty slim. You're probably going to die of natural causes if you made it that far, because the majority of guys aren't. The majority of hunters in the area have been doing the same thing for 10 years or whatever, until some guy comes in and shakes it up and does something a little different.
Sure.
At least in this area. And, you guys witnessed it a little bit. It's thick and it's not fun. So
we just got to the edges of it. I didn't drag you guys through the complete hellhole of it, but
Yeah, I didn't figure so.
it was funny. I was tempted to take you guys right into where I killed him, but you probably would have hated me. And Dan would still be in that bathroom at the Thai restaurant.
Yeah.
I can appreciate the fact that Dan didn't have to go through that, or any of us had to go through that, because
Maybe the Thai restaurant incident would have happened out there.
maybe it would have happened ahead of time. You're right.
This spot would have never been the same again. Nuclear bombed it.
Have you been back there since?
Oh yeah, it's funny. I was joking about it. I went in there and I was like talking crap about Dan to the guy, because that's my go-to spot. I was like, "Can you believe that guy? Jeez, what are you doing?" No, it wasn't that bad. The guy was cool. He was like, "Oh no, it's okay. Things happen." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Food was delicious.
Yeah, I feel really bad, because I feel like Dan's never going to want to try Thai food now, just because like when you don't feel good and you're introduced to a new food, now his brain is just going to associate negativity with that food, and the food is really incredible there.
All right, let's enlighten everybody. So
go ahead, Dan. It's up to you.
We get done scouting.
It was hot.
We were covered in sweat. We were just drenched. I mean, wring your shirt out kind of sweat. And Pat's nice enough to take us over to his trailer, and we all take showers and change and stuff. And I don't think for one moment that he had a camera watching us, and that's why he wanted us to shower. But anywho, he gets us in the truck, and he says, "I'm going to take you out to eat at a really nice place. I love this place, to thank you guys for coming out," or whatever. And he says, "You like Thai food?" And I'm like, "I never ate Thai food." And he's like, "You'll like this place." So we all get in the truck and we start going, and all of a sudden I start feeling really weird. Like, I mean, I start getting a headache. I start getting woozy. Things are starting to float around, and I'm not doing too good. And,
I can sense it while I'm driving. I'm like, uh-oh, because I go through the same thing.
So I'm like, I thought I was going to puke or something, and my head started hurting really bad. And I'm like, "You got any aspirin in here?" And I started digging through his glove box and stuff, and I got past the dildos and stuff. And I found a pack of aspirin, and I take the aspirins, and they helped a little. But I still had this thing where I started feeling like I was going to puke. And every time we went over a hill or something, I was like getting really woozy.
And mind you, I don't drive good either.
I could feel something coming on. But we get to this restaurant, and we go in there, and this Thai guy is, he's a real nice guy, older guy. He looks real nice. He greets you at the door. He's like, gives you the nod and stuff. You go in there, and it was a really cool place. I mean, you don't eat at a table. They got it's like you're walking into somebody's living room. There's nice couches and sofas and stuff and lamps. And so we go in there and we sit down, and Pat's like, they got this soup that's real good. I mean, you eat the soup, and
you're going to feel better.
It kind of cures you. It'll make you feel better. So he orders me the soup, and then he asked me what I want to eat. I'm like, whatever you think I should have, And I can hardly talk because I'm feeling like I'm going to puke or something, and the room's spinning. And he orders me this giant dish of food and this bowl of soup. And I'm like taking sips of the soup, and I'm just like, oh. And all of a sudden I got a crap, and I realized I hadn't crapped in like 10 days. And I got to, suddenly now I got to go. And I get up and I go to the bathroom, and I sit down. And the bathroom, when you walk in, it's not like a regular bathroom. You walk in there, it's like walking into a bedroom with a toilet in the middle. And there's like chairs and stuff and books and stuff. The floor is carpeted. I mean, really nice place,
The floor was carpeted.
The floor used to be carpeted.
And I got to say too, we're the only ones in the place, So I go in there, and I start going and going and going, and it's 10 days worth of stuff. And I get up, and first of all, it's a little tiny toilet because these Thai guys seem to be little tiny guys, I guess. But I get up, and it is full. It's completely full. You can't see water no more. And,
were you lifted up above the seat? Was it right? Was it lifted
like a giant Hershey's Kiss just poking through the mountain?
There's good news and there's bad news. And the good news was I instantly started feeling better and realized that's probably why I was getting sick. So I tried flushing the toilet, and the water comes up and it goes over the top and the crap's coming up and things are floating over the top and they're getting into the carpet and I'm like looking around frantically. There's no plunger in there. There's no nothing. There's not. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and when we got there, Pat's telling me how he loves this place. He goes in there every week. His kid works for the guy, and this is like his best friend kind of thing. And it's like, oh my God,
great spot.
So I back up a little bit, and it's coming for the door, and I go out the door. And as I'm going out the door, the water is coming out the door into the hallway. And remember, I said it's the size of a bedroom. So I get out of there, and I'm like, if I was there without Pat, I'd have just walked through that out the door and kept going.
And that's the perspective we had. So at this point, let me grab the story from here. So at this point, I'm facing, my back's to the entrance of the restaurant, and I'm looking right at Dan coming out of the bathroom. He comes out of the bathroom, and I see him walk like, I think he's leaving. I'm like, oh, he really doesn't feel good. He's about to go sit in the car,
Yeah.
So he walks over, and I see him chatting with the guy at the counter. And I'm like, all right, this isn't good. And then I see that guy jog into the bathroom, and then Dan comes back and sits down, and he looks a little better, but he only had like 2 or 3 words that he said to us. He said, "It's not good." That's all he said. So at this point, we can hear the Thai guy that owns the restaurant in the bathroom, like saying something, and he comes running out of there because he just went to investigate. He wanted to see if whatever Dan was saying, whatever Dan told him, he just wanted to go check it out. So he comes running out, and then he goes into the back room, and then he runs back by with a plunger, like running, like marathon style running. He goes in there, and you can just hear this guy sounding like he's like changing the tire on an old carriage from 1920. Like there's just clinking and clunking going on. And then he comes out with the soaking wet plunger and he gives up on it because that's not working. That's not going to help for the beast shit. It's not. You need a bigger weapon for this. Then the guy comes running back the other way with a 6-foot red industrial plumber snake. And I like this
snake,
is this isn't like a play plumber snake. This is the only thing that can get the job done. So he's in there, and this guy's like, I don't know who he's talking to in Thai. I think he's on the phone with like the owners of the building or the sewage department or something.
He's like frantically screaming in some foreign language. Like,
and he's going crazy with it. He eventually, after a few minutes, mind you, all of us are at the table dying laughing at this point, and Dan's alive, so we're good, but we're all crying. We're all crying at this point, and the guy comes running by with that, and then he goes back in with a mop. And he's in there with a little while with the mop. Then I see him go by at one point with pieces of carpet that were drenched. I mean, Dan changed the geographics of this restaurant forever. Yeah. It was pretty incredible.
I don't know, was it him or one of the helpers ran? There was some giant pole.
Yeah,
that was the plumber snake.
That was the plumber snake.
He was prepared. He was prepared as you or I are for a hunt. He had the right weapon for the job. That was the only thing.
I couldn't even look that guy in the eye.
I never turned around. My whole existence at that point, my back was to the bathroom, and everything that was happening was based on me looking at you and looking at the other Dan, because I couldn't look back there. But I had this overwhelming sense of relief that Dan at least was feeling better. Because I was about to have to deal with Dan for the next 8+ hours from airport to airport, and I was petrified. I'm like, we got to find the CVS. We're gonna get some Pepto. We're gonna get all the stuff because I was worried.
But the good news is Dan's gonna have a line of T-shirts where you guys can all celebrate this activity.
I meant to actually have those.
Here's a couple of
the
design.
The Flushing Beast.
The Flushing Beast is one. You guys, we want the viewers at home to vote on which T-shirt they want me to make for Dan. So there's one.
The Flushing Beast.
We have the Swamp Ass Beast, and you notice the Thai hat on him too, right? And then the last one, which is Dan's favorite, is the Toilet Bowl Serial Killer. And it's got the commemorative dookie that was poking out of the toilet there for you. So you guys can buy these on Dan's website soon.
Oh my God.
So I never even really got to eat the food or anything. Pat took it home for his kids, I think, right?
Yeah. I fed my kids. I was waiting for them to all get sick too, hours later. But
I'm facing Pat and Pat Burns, the other Pat who was on earlier. I'm looking at him, and that guy's going by, and it was the worst ever because I'm trying to not laugh, and he's giving a play-by-play. It's like, oh, he's getting a big stick. Oh, he went and got a mop. Oh, now
You're
he's
talking about the other Dan. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan Jaros.
Dan
yeah.
Jaros.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
Dan. I'm sorry. And
Dangerous Dan.
yeah, and at one point, the guy looks over at us and like gives us a glare, and Dan, the Dan Jaros guy, just busts out laughing, and I just felt so bad for the guy.
Oh my God. And the best part about it is that, like I said, I go to this restaurant like twice a week, 3 times a week sometimes. That isn't the owner. That isn't the guy that signed up for this job to work whatever happens at this restaurant.
That would have been my last day.
this guy was like his brother-in-law who was covering for him
Oh
for the
my
day
God.
as a favor. And I don't think he'll be doing it again.
So I went out to eat, and I came out of that restaurant 15 pounds lighter.
You had to have. You had to have.
Yeah. So when I went back in there the next time, the guy was in there, and I was just kind of feeling him out and joking with him. You know, I was like, "Hey, sorry for my buddy the other day, man. Sorry about that." But he took it like a champ. He wasn't mad or anything. I was waiting for him to kind of,
You go
Kinda-
now. You never come back.
poison my
No,
food or
you're not
something
coming
after. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like I said, I couldn't even turn around. I took a couple glances over my shoulder. I just was like locked in. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening right now. And my biggest concern, honestly, was for myself. I was being very selfish. I was like, I'm going to have to deal with a very sick Dan flying back to Wisconsin right now. And so when you came back out and you're like, I feel a lot better. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that you feel better. I feel bad for this guy,
Yeah.
what he's going through back there. But Dan feels better. I feel better. This is great.
Imagine that in the plane, we would have crashed the plane.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, we would have been over weight capacity.
There's no way a plane toilet could handle that. You know, when you hit the plane toilet, you hear that air flushing.
Yeah.
That thing would have just been coughing the whole time.
Somebody
gagging
over
on you.
Scranton, Pennsylvania would have died.
Yeah.
Get
It had
hit
to
with
leave
that.
the valve.
But the lesson from all this is, if you don't feel good, just go take a shit after eating some Thai food. You'll
Yeah.
be good.
So my reference earlier, I had said, that I think you were a little apprehensive about going out there, not really knowing what to expect in that. And I think that might have contributed to the 10 days of not shitting. And then everything was all said and done, and be like, hey, this went down swimmingly. And then everything's just
That's the only thing that went down smoothly that way.
Oh, well, I thought maybe we were going to get into this, but I certainly didn't think we were going to end the show on that note. But that's some good stuff. Pat, anything else that you want to share with any of us?
I mean, we're just, thank you guys for having me first and foremost. But we're really excited that you guys believed in us to the point of coming out and checking out the show and what we're trying to do for the hunting community. And we really appreciate that. We're stoked. We're excited as hell to do that same thing out there and try to just build that community out there, especially in like the heart of the country where hunting is such a bigger part of the culture. Here where we are in Massachusetts, I did a Google search, I was telling you guys earlier, and I looked up in New England, there's like something like 370,000 hunters in all of New England. That's Massachusetts, Maine, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, all of that. All together, there's about that many deer hunters based on licenses purchased. Just in Wisconsin, you guys have 750,000. So you guys are in like the part of the country where everyone appreciates and loves and lives deer hunting. So we're so excited to be able to come out there and kind of just see what that's about for you guys, and help put something together with you guys that helps just celebrate what we all love and appreciate in the hunting world, man. We're stoked. We can't wait. Pat's working like 12-hour days on this, and we're like a year out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 11 months away yet.
It's going to be great, man. Yeah, we're excited, man. So yeah, Huntstock this coming 2026 July at Dodge County. Is that it?
Dodge County Fairgrounds.
Dodge
Yep.
County. Yeah, I keep saying Jefferson, but Dodge County. And like Pat was saying earlier, we're going to give away a free booth space to a vendor. Just email Pat at huntsuburbia@gmail.com. Huntsuburbia at
There it is. Yep.
gmail.com. You can email him, and he's gonna hook one of you guys up with a 10x10 indoor booth space. And anybody else that's hearing this in the area and that's interested in coming, be on the lookout. We're going to be posting and talking about some of the things that we're trying to do out there, which is going to be great, man. We're excited to come and kind of build something with you guys. And thanks, Dan, for being a huge part of that.
Yeah, no problem. And anything we can do to help. I mean, I would love to see that come to Wisconsin and see it. The people here get to experience it and influence more people to be involved in hunting.
Yep, it's wonderful. Yeah, we're stoked, man. We're excited. We're excited. I actually saw comments on some of the scouting video that we did, and there was people saying like, bring Lanny out here, bring Hal out here. So we're excited to do that too, to be able to bring some of these guys that are legends from our part of the world into
your might be like you brought me out there, and people are so excited because I have never been there.
We're doing the same
somebody
thing
that you've been following. You're going to bring them out here, and there's a lot of people here who love Lanny and Rick and those guys. Me included.
Hal, yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be great, man. We're really trying to do is just forward the culture, man. We want to shine a light on what we all love. We need to band together. There needs to be less division in the hunting world. That the guys shouldn't be fighting over, gun hunters versus bow hunters versus crossbow hunters versus stand hunters versus trackers versus. Nah, man, we all love the outdoors. We love to be able to have the ability and freedom to be able to survive off the land if we need to, and we're not losing part of the innate thing that makes us human. That's the biggest thing for me sitting in the stand, man, is I feel more human than anywhere else when it's the sun's just coming up and my ears are tuned in to a different frequency of the universe and hearing a squirrel hop off a tree 100 yards away, and that's what makes it incredible. And we just want to celebrate that with all you guys and look forward to seeing you, man. Thanks so much for having me again. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time here tonight. And, we really look forward to Wisconsin, Huntstock, and everything you guys are going to be bringing out here to the Midwest. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Great. Thanks, man. See you guys soon.
Tonight.